We all understand. Still not nice, Barbara.
She knows I love her.
There was a big article today on Zoom fatigue. Did you see that? That it's
I feel it real.
It's a new physiological phenomenon. It's like a new thing. Zoom fatigue.
Oh, we're there. We're there.
Okay, okay, all of you. Okay, all of you need to be quiet for one moment, please.
So
Are we being recorded now?
Now you are.
Thank you very much, Madam Administrator. Good evening, everybody. This is the public hearing for Transportation and Corrections and Judicial. We are happy to have you all here. We have 40.
Madam Chair.
Well, did I say something wrong again?
And
yes.
No, and technically the legislative subcommittee as well.
Oh, okay. Legislative subcommittee too.
That's why YouTube didn't like my title.
Because it was too long.
It was too long.
Okay. So anyways, we have 45 people to speak tonight, keeping that in mind. No more than 2 questions per person. And remember that the longer you speak, the longer we will be on Zoom tonight. And we're really here to listen to the public, and so I'm not going to stop anybody from asking a question, but I would just remind you we would like to get through the 45 people. So that being said, we are now being recorded and we're live on YouTube. Representative Walker, do you have any words?
No, I just want to welcome everybody and say let's rock and roll.
Representative France. No, you're muted, Mike.
I had to change microphones again. Madam Chair, I just want to welcome everybody. Looking forward to hearing from the public on these this part of the budget. So, welcome, everybody.
Thank you. Representative Candelaria.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to welcome everyone for taking time out of their evening to testify. I'm looking forward to hearing the testimony. So thank you.
Representative Pavlak D'Amato.
No questions, and thank you everybody for being here on a Friday night.
Representative Rosario.
I want to echo my colleagues' sentiments. I want to thank everybody for their time. I'm looking forward to the testimony.
Representative Zawistowski.
Thanks everybody for being here. I do look forward to listening to the testimony tonight.
I know that there are other public hearings going on still. While you may not see everybody that's here on the committee, it is because they are on other meetings right now. So just remember that I believe there is still a judicial meeting going on and a public health meeting going on. So first up is Judge Wexler. Judge?
Hi. Thank you.
You got the #1 spot.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Senator Austin. I want to say hello to Senator Austin, Representative Tony Walker, Senate Ranking Member Craig Minor, House Ranking Member Mike France, and all the honorable members of the Appropriations Committee. I really am sorry that I'm not with you in person, and maybe next year I'll get to be. My name is Lisa Wexler, and I've served as the Westport Weston Probate Judge for now over 7 years. And my testimony today is a little bit different than that which I usually have before you, because I just want to tell you a little story. On Wednesday, March 10, 2020, I was sitting at my desk where I am pretty much in the same building right now. And I noticed there was something going on in the hallway. And I decided to peer out of my office and go and noticed in the front of town hall, there was a big commotion. And our first selectman, Jim Marpy, was speaking. And it turned out that there were 40 people that got sick at a party in Westport, where Westport all of a sudden became ground zero. And it became the first town hall in the state to officially close to the public on that Wednesday. What I want you to know as our state representatives and senators is that our mighty but small but mighty little probate court never closed. Never closed. We never missed a beat. We showed up to work that day, the next day, and the day after. I personally came into court throughout all of COVID, and my staff was cohorted 2 and 2 for several months
You're-
But here, want you to.
Judge, you are,
Recommitment proceeding was set.
Judge, you are frozen.
Oh,
If you can hear us,
So sorry.
there you
I
go.
can hear you.
Okay,
Can
go
you hear
ahead.
me now?
Yeah.
Sorry.
What, if you want to,
That the people's business never stopped. Can you hear me?
yes,
Yes. Okay. So all throughout this, and in fact, between June and July and November, I resumed in-person hearings at the hospital until the latest outbreak. I wanted to tell you some of the stories because not all of you are really familiar with what we do, and less than 50% of what we do is actually probate. The case that broke my heart was a middle-aged woman with a history of schizophrenia since the age of 12. Her father described her as having the mind of a 6-year-old. Unfortunately, because she had gotten COVID, her doctors had stopped giving her her psych meds. And so even though she had been stable in a group home for years, she ended up in isolation, one-on-one ward with COVID-19 in the local psychiatric hospital because they had stopped her psych meds. Her symptoms reappeared. She started hearing voices and she was pitifully crying, help me, I'm scared, I'm all alone in the hospital. It was probably the most pitiful hearing that we had. We have continued to do the people's business, appointing fiduciaries. I know that some of you have a very deep understanding of what probate courts do. Maybe some of you don't. So I'm going to be very brief and tell you a typical day. This is literally my day yesterday in my docket. My first hearing was a request for a name change of a minor already decided to change his biological gender. He had both of his parents' support. During the hearing, the parents asked about changing the gender on the birth certificate, which, as you know, come to probate court where the person is not born in this state. This individual happened to not have been born in Connecticut. So when the parents want to change the gender officially as of the time of birth, they have to come back to the court. They asked me if the hearing would be confidential. And I had to tell them that I didn't think that it would be, but that they could apply for it to be sealed. By the way, you might want to change that. As far as I'm concerned, any minor who wants to do a gender change, it should be automatically confidential. And you 42B. I'm just saying. Second hearing I had was a dispute between the second wife and the child from the first marriage, the child now an adult. We hear all the time, except here's what the difference was in that matter. In that matter, the child, now an adult, advanced Parkinson's disease. And the wife argued that there should be no support during the administration of the estate. No support. Why? Because the child was not technically family, because the child was no longer a minor. Welcome to my world. Welcome to my world. Okay.
so Judge, I need you to wrap up.
All right, I'm going to wrap up. Here's what I'm going to read you. I got something in the mail today. You want to know how important probate court is? This is not to sing my own praises, but it made me cry. I got a letter. Dear Judge Wexler, you most likely don't remember me, but my husband, November 2015 at St. Vincent's in Westport, for our meeting we will never forget. We wrote a poem and we want you to have it. Listen to this. The legal conservator judge looked at my child in the eyes and said, giving us hope that we would cling to and did not dread, you are going to get better, don't fret. They just haven't found the right cocktail yet. I tell you the truth, it made me cry. She wrote a 2-page poem to me and all about her son's healing. And you know what? I don't really remember. But day in and day out, I try and be kind. The system works. It may not be perfect because we as people are imperfect. But I funding it. We are local, we are here, and we have kept the doors open during this pandemic without a beat. That's what I'm asking you for. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. We really appreciate it. Are there any questions for Judge Wexler? Seeing none. Thank you very much, Judge. We really appreciate it. We appreciate the work you do.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye. Next up is Representative Wielander.
Hello, good evening. And hello to all of the honorable chairs and ranking members of the committee. My name is Mary Wielander and I represent the 114th district, which includes Orange, Woodbridge, and Derby. I'm here tonight to offer my enthusiastic support of the proposed improvements to the Waterbury Rail Line as outlined in the governor's proposed budget. and to share some of the potential positive impact this action would have on the entire Naugatuck Valley, but specifically its effect on the city of Derby. If we look at the framework for a successful modern small city, Derby has all of the puzzle pieces needed: location, historic buildings, a walkable downtown, available area for development. To complete that framework, we need to address transportation. Some of those factors have begun to be addressed, and the next piece is improving the practical day-to-day functioning of the Waterbury Rail Line. While mass transportation has faced serious challenges across the state and the country due to the pandemic, when comparing the loss of ridership of all rail lines in Connecticut, the Waterbury line showed the strongest ridership levels. That this level was maintained during a global pandemic, and while large structural repairs were interrupting service and requiring supplemental bus routes, shows a very clear need and support for this transportation service in the area. This past fall, I spent a couple of hours in Derby at the Derby Shelton train station and spoke with a handful of riders who were waiting for their connecting bus to travel home further in the valley. The Waterbury line was their main option for transportation. I asked if their daily lives would see any benefits if the rail line improved, and each one emphatically said yes. Not only would they see a positive change in their daily lives, but it would open up potential for life-changing opportunities because these opportunities would be accessible. The additional trains and improved schedule options are important steps that would allow residents to get to work more easily and would keep cars off the road, thereby improving traffic conditions and reducing the environmental impact of commuting. It would also bring more people into Derby, its restaurants and shops, as well as the rest of the valley, and be a critical part of the overall success and rejuvenation of an area that has seen decades of economic hardship. I would like to thank the committee for recognizing the potential impact of this additional funding for the Waterbury Rail Line and for supporting this opportunity to improve the lives of the residents of Derby and the Naugatuck Valley. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Representative. Are there any questions for Representative Welander? Seeing none. Thank you very much. Have a nice night. Enjoy your weekend. Next up is Ms. Fair.
Hi. Make sure I'm not muted. Okay, good evening, Appropriations Chair and other distinguished members of the committee. My name is Barbara Fair, and I'm an organizer for Stop Solitary Connecticut and also a member of My Brother's Keeper, and I live in West Haven. Thank you for the opportunity to come before you to urge you to invest in the lives of the most vulnerable people in our state, those who are held in state custody. Incarceration is about losing one's liberty. It should not be about losing one's life. So much money in Connecticut is spent providing a high quality of life for one sector of our community while it diminishes the quality of life for others. I have seen the correctional budget rise from 168 million in 1968 to over 700 million by 2008. Corrections has moved from rehabilitation toward a cheap labor force and containment. No one seemed to question why over 17 million was spent to operate Northern Supermax, which held 50 people with a staff of over 200 to supervise them. These were people who spent 23 to 24 hours a day on lockdown. Why no one ever questioned why in 2020, DOC paid out $78 million in overtime alone? Where's the fiscal responsibility in that? Overcriminalization of poor communities costs taxpayers billions. The human capital we can never calculate. Almost half of the money spent on running these facilities goes towards paying staff. Correctional, like police, have lots of political influence. Many times the influence prevents from reform from occurring, and that same influence protects DOC's jobs while prison population dwindles. Incarcerated people need that same kind of influence, and that's why we're asking for independent oversight as one of the listed demands within the PROTECT Act. Oversight is needed to sustain lives of the most vulnerable population. I'll just skip over some of it because you have my thing. So I'm talking about in 2018, UConn was granted a no bid contract paying $140 million annually. The care was deemed substandard, but year after year, due to lack of external oversight of the quality of medical and mental health care, it dwindled, yet UConn got paid. In 2016, DOC flagged 25 medical cases that went wrong, resulting in the death of 8 people. One of those people was 19-year-old Karan Neely. He was serving 2-year sentence. He complained of sore throat, hair loss, rash, loss of appetite, intense joint pain, and fatigue. He was seen by the doctors 10 times, and he ended up dying within 10 months of his incarceration from total organ failure and lung infection, just months before going home. The lawsuit followed that condition. Another was 19-year-old Tatiana Laboy, who gave birth in the toilet in her locked cell because her cries for help were ignored. Again, the state paid out a lawsuit. There are just too many lawsuits in Connecticut, and it's because of medical and mental neglect and countless incidents of physical and psychological abuse. Had external oversight been in place, lives as well as multi-millions could have been saved. Correctional positions rose from 1,500 in 1969 to over 7,000 in 2002. Currently, the staff stands at 6,117, even as the population dwindled below 10,000. And I guess the question for me is, does it make sense to have over 6,000 people, staff members, to supervise less than 10,000 people, especially when a huge number of them are in their cells for 22 and 23 hours a day? It makes perfect sense for the department to call for a moratorium on hiring. A reduction in their budget might make them move toward fiscal responsibility. So I urge you to make decisions to not only save money, but also to save lives. So I want to thank you for your attention to those who need it the most.
Thank you, Barbara. Are there any questions for Barbara?
Yes, I just want to say.
Representative Walker.
I just want to say thank you, Barbara, for being such a strong advocate and really coming up and shaking up the issues. So, I mean, every time you come up, I learn a little bit more, and it just sometimes it's even more painful. So, thank you for your testimony, and I support the ombudsman. Totally.
Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you.
Up next is Kathy Flaherty. At least she's home and not out
Yes,
in a
I'm here.
snowstorm.
I'm not, oh my gosh, you're still not gonna let me forget that. I have been home for a year because I've been sick, but I'm really pleased to be here tonight to offer my thoughts regarding the governor's budget, regarding especially judicial branch, probate court administration, and the Department of Correction. Very much want to extend thanks to the governor for the level funding of the legal aid line in the judicial branch budget. Would just point out to you, though, as you probably are already aware, that the needs have increased, and level funding is great, but is another area where I hope that you might find the place to give more money. One thing that always baffles me every year is how there can be a multi-million-dollar proposed cut in the probate court administration budget, and to have it designated as applying to the cash flow. I don't know how that works. And you already heard Judge Beverly, you heard Judge Lisa Wexler testify as well. We often at CLRP criticize what happens in probate court. However, probate court needs money to function, to pay conservators, to pay doctors and psychiatrists for their second opinions, to pay the court-appointed lawyers who represent people. So that proposed cut should be looked at very carefully. And also here, really for the first time, I think, to comment on the DOC budget. Too many people with mental health conditions end up interacting with the criminal legal system because they aren't getting the services and supports they need from other systems. As we are cutting the number of people who are incarcerated, and DOC is talking about shutting facilities, it's time to invest those savings in either the upstream interventions or reentry programs. When the state closed the state hospitals back in the mid-90s, there was a promise made that the savings would be reinvested in the community-based system of care. That never happened. That's how we got to be where we are. I really hope that as facilities close at DOC, the money gets reinvested in the communities that need it most. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Kathy. Are there any comments or questions for Kathy Flaherty? I think that, Kathy, you should pay attention to the percentage of those that are chronically mentally ill that are incarcerated.
Believe me, we are. You're right.
The percentage is going to go up year over year. Thank you very much, Kathy. Up
Thanks.
next is Alden Woodcock.
Yes, hello committee members. I'm Alden. I'm the executive director at Emerge Connecticut Incorporated. And I'm here because my mentor and Emerge's founding ED, Dan Husino, gave me a chance in 2013 to change my life. Over the past 8 years, Emerge has given me the strength and support to change my outlook, behaviors, and priorities, as well as give me a broadened understanding of what it means to be human, what it means to be a man, and what it means to be white in this country. I've had the privilege of working with hundreds of men and women returning to the New Haven community from incarceration over this time frame. Each person has taught me invaluable lessons and pushed me to be the best possible version of myself. Emerge is a social enterprise. We're a certified and fully insured home improvement contractor that hires adults returning home from incarceration. While earning a paycheck and learning valuable skill sets in construction, Emerge crew members and staff engage in a transformative personal development work that destigmatizes mental health and serves as a safe place for us to pause, process our experiences, connect, understand, and heal. Since 2011, Emerge has been the best kept secret in New Haven. What happens behind our doors at Grand Avenue is nothing short of magic. I know that if the members of the committee could see this process in action, we would not be testifying here today because Emerge would not only be fully funded, but it would be the statewide model for reentry. Over the past decade, 12% of Emerge alumni have experienced recidivism. Compare that to 47% at 2 years recidivism at the state level. Over 70% of Emerge alumni find full-time employment immediately after Emerge, and 3/4 are still working a year later. The state of Connecticut has committed to reducing the prison population and has done well. We all know, though, that if our loved ones who are returning home do not have the support and a place to heal from the trauma of incarceration, grow, and experience meaningful opportunities, this effort will be in vain. Today, I am asking for your continued and increased support of Emerge. It's time for us to take the best kept secret to scale. We're asking for continued support from Department of Corrections in the amount of $150,000 per year to continue to support those on parole and in halfway houses. In addition, we'd like to begin supporting the much larger CSSD probation population by requesting an additional $150,000 per year from the Judicial branch. With this total yearly investment of $300,000, our team will be able to support 50 individuals annually at a cost of only $6,000 per person and keep 88% out of prison at least. That's a savings to the state of over $1.4 million a year in just incarceration costs alone. Not to mention they're paying back into the system as employees and as family, as fathers and mothers. This investment is what our community deserves at a crucial time. Thank you for listening, and I hope you'll strongly consider our testimony. And I also want to shout out Leighton Johnson, who's testifying later, who's an alumni of Emerge, doing excellent work with Stop Solitary CT. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Woodcock. Are there any comments or questions for Mr. Woodcock?
I just want to say thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next is Warden Gillis. Mr. Gillis? I know I saw him. Mr. Gillis?
Am I still muted?
No, you're not now.
That's very good. Good evening, Senator Austin, Representative Walker, Senator Minor, Representative France, and members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Robert J. Gillis, and I am a resident of New Haven. I'm a steering committee member of Stop Solitary Connecticut, and I thank you for the opportunity to present this evening. I'll be offering comments on the governor's budget for the Department of Correction with specific reference to a bill which we support called the PROTECT Act. I'll preface my remarks by noting that I retired from the Department of Correction after a 36-year career, 18 years of which were at the level of warden in 3 different facilities. Without going into major detail, we believe that approximately $17 million would be saved through the reduction of direct and ancillary expenses caused by the maintenance of isolated housing. The question should arise, if you purport to a savings, why come to this committee, which has the task of deciding where state revenue should be allocated? My answer is simple and straightforward. Money is the implementation of policy. Excuse me?
Keep going, Mr. Gillis. That was just somebody signing on and they didn't mute
Sure,
fast enough.
We believe that the policy which we are advancing improves the quality of institutional life for those who are incarcerated by limiting the number of hours per day when an incarcerated person is held locked in a cell, establishing restrictions on what are called in-cell restraints, encouraging the continuation of social connections and with family and close friends, developing a reliable and more accurate compilation of data concerning restrictive placement, establishment of effective oversight through the creation of an ombuds function, the extension of workers' compensation for correctional employees deemed to be affected by PTSD, and the development of wellness programs designed to reduce the stress of working in the correctional environment. We estimate that the costs of the ombuds function, the employee wellness options, and the maintenance of social relationships will be outweighed by the savings. Northern CI will be closed, and we are not including those savings in our calculations. But there's much more that can be done if our policy is implemented by increased funding. Our position is that the Northern CI reduction should be directed to enhanced educational and vocational programming, provision of pro-social therapeutic programs, establishing mental illness interventions which are productive to treatment and which rely less on mere containment and control, and finally, funding community-based programs at higher levels. Remember, at least 90% of those incarcerated are ultimately released. Their experiences should reflect the latest developments in social reintegration and not the obsolete practices of some 60 years in the past. Thank you.
Thank you, Warden. Are there any comments or questions for Mr. Gillis? Thank you very much. Appreciate everything that you do. Up next is Ronaldo Cruz.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ronaldo Cruz. I am the Director of Training and Business Development at Emerge Connecticut. I'm dedicated to training and preparing our men and women for the workforce. The Mayor, Justin Elicker, has been steadfast in getting us into the right meetings with the people that we need to collaborate with and helping us to get more work opportunities to assist us in our success. Preparing our crew members to be successful in the world is our focus. Assisting our men in their personal development to ensure insight into their emotions. Securing emotional intelligence as a main tool to navigate staying conscious of our triggers, and utilizing the pause button to enable healthy, positive outcomes in uncomfortable situations.
Doctor instructed him to.
What we're in right now is really like a recession, this COVID, but not in construction. Even in an economic crisis, this is about creating equitable access to those project opportunities. We all know coming home from incarceration right into a full-time employment is not natural. Our people need support, need time to heal before jumping into a career path. The unions are in need of a new folks, and we are in a position to prepare our men for this opportunity. We are ready to help them see this career opportunity as a pathway to economic independence. Work for the formerly incarcerated is never an issue. But we know work has never kept anyone out of prison. Our program services are the key to our people's success. Our need to scale up the program support is what is needed. Wearing 3 hats is the challenge we embrace as staff of this nonprofit that does great work. Yet scaling up our administrative capacity is our next step. Give us the tools we need to dismantle the master's house. In Spanish, we say, a donde comen tres, comen cuatro. 4 people can eat where we served enough for 3. Yet the truth is there will be less food for each. With added capacity to our staff, more attention will be available. More healing will be facilitated. Helping people escape The trap of systemic marginalization will be aided and will become reality. What I'm asking for is $150,000 from DOC to continue to serve our people on parole, and Still Emerge is asking for another $150,000 from CCSD to serve our people on probation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Are there any comments or questions? Looks like you're all set. Thanks so much, Mr. Cruz. Up next is Richard Watkins. Mr. Watkins? I know he's on, so. Mr.
Hello?
Watkins, there you
Yes, can you
go.
hear me?
Yep, you're
All right,
all
good
set
evening.
now.
All right, thank you. Good evening. Good evening. My name is Richard Watkins, and I'm an employee at Emerge Connecticut. 2 years ago, I was referred to Emerge by my parole officer. I attended the orientation and made a 6 to 9 month commitment to the program. Never did I believe a repeat offender as myself would receive the outcome I have. I completed the program and within a year was hired as an assistant supervisor. 6 months later, 6 months later, I was given a raise and also promoted as supervisor/peer mentor. Emerge specializes in demolition, landscaping, but the real work at Emerge is personal development. The concepts, personal development and emotional intelligence propel me into a lifestyle of accomplishing goals and seeking success. Every goal I set became obtainable. I realized the only real competition was myself. It is overwhelming to be able to express myself, to express what this organization has done for me on such a large platform. I'm a true living testament of what this program has done for me and many other formerly incarcerated men and women surrounding Raven County. Most recently, we graduated a gentleman into our program who served a 30-year sentence. The entire staff knew this person will be challenged in every aspect of life. We knew this because most individuals who are recently released after serving the least amount of time of incarceration re-enter society with mental health issues such as anxiety, PTSD, and every other kind of stress imaginable. This gentleman came in for training one morning after only being home for 30 days and expressed all his emotions of not having finances to support himself. He was upset and had every right to be. Me and other staff completely understood his frustration. What really bothered us all was another organization offered to find him a job the night before. At Emerge, we informed all recently released men and women a job is not enough to keep anyone from recidivism. It took a half hour of pleading with this gentleman to give Emerge a chance before making a choice to find employment so soon. He finally relaxed, and I took him and the rest of the group for a walk around the parking lot while it was snowing, so everyone could reflect and process their thoughts. Emerge is asking for $150,000 a year from the Department of Corrections to continue to serve parole and halfway houses. In addition, Emerge is also asking for $150,000 a year from the Judicial branch, CSSD, so that we can begin to serve the even larger probation population. I honestly believe this is a small amount to save a remarkable amount of lives. Everyone deserves a fair chance to create their own vision of success. The gentleman I spoke of who served 30 years of incarceration is doing great at this moment. He's enrolled in our literacy program, construction training, and also attends other programs to obtain life skills. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Watkins. Are there any comments or questions for Mr. Watkins? Seeing none, thank you so much. Thank you for your testimony. Up next is Joseph Galen.
Hi, thank you. Good evening, Senator Austin, Representative Walker, Senator Minor, Representative France, and distinguished members of the Appropriations Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today about Governor Lamont's budget proposal concerning the Connecticut Department of Correction. For the record, my name is Joseph Galen. I'm a resident of New Haven, and I'm a steering committee member of Stop Solitary CT, an organization dedicated to ending the use of prolonged isolation in Connecticut's prisons and jails. In addition to Northern CI, the governor has committed to closing 2 more prisons, projecting approximately $46.9 million in savings. These prison closures are long overdue and well warranted, but we are concerned that the governor's budget does not appropriate these savings to meaningfully protect the lives of incarcerated people. Although Northern is scheduled to close, extreme isolation occurs throughout the Department of Correction, and the human rights abuses that occurred at Northern are by no means unique to the facility. At present, the Connecticut DOC has little to no external oversight. It fails to collect meaningful data on isolation. It utilizes abusive restraints and continues to unnecessarily and excessively isolate people. Stop Solitary CT recently released a report, which you all should have a copy of in your emails, called Protecting Lives, Saving Dollars. It projects that the PROTECT Act would save Connecticut approximately $14 million each year. We expect that the projected $2.5 million in costs associated with the PROTECT Act would be more than offset by a projected $17 million in savings that stem directly from a reduction in isolation. In a moment defined by social distancing, the importance of social interaction has never been clearer. In a moment of reckoning with profound inequalities in our criminal justice system, the importance of allocating funds to support pro-social, humane practices in the Department of Correction should feel just as obvious. Stop Solitary CT firmly believes that the governor's budget must earmark funds saved from the closing of prisons to protect incarcerated people. We believe that ending extreme isolation is not only cost-effective, but also long overdue. Finally, we believe that the PROTECT Act is an effective blueprint for transformative change in our correctional system. Thank you again for the members of this committee for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Galen. Are there any comments or questions for Mr. Galen? Seeing none. Thank you so much. Up next is Colleen Doba.
Hi, my name is Colleen Dobo, and I thank you for giving me the opportunity to testify. I want to speak about maintaining funds for CSSD, especially treatment funds for people on probation and parole. The agency that I work for, Community Health Resources, I spoke to the committee a couple of years ago to get support for providing medication-assisted treatment in the Department of Corrections. And I want to let you know that CHR is now providing medication-assisted treatment in 3 correctional facilities, and we are working towards opening 3 additional facilities. That the first facility we worked in at Niantic some years ago, that what we found is that while only 40% of people who are coming out of incarceration actually connect to treatment in the community, those who are on medication-assisted treatment, 70% of them connected to treatment. And we all know that over half of the people who die in Connecticut of an overdose have a history of incarceration, and that one of the highest rates of mortality for individuals who are coming out of corrections in the first month is by accidental opioid overdose. So we have been making great strides in bringing this service, and I want to thank the committee for providing the resources to do that, which I think is now amply funded, and that we're making great strides. And I want you to know that while it may seem that the correctional environment and culture and bringing together the recovery environment and culture, that there are some very good people in the facilities that we're working with who are very dedicated to this and very passionate about it. And we really appreciate that. What I want to speak to is that the individuals who are in the pre-trial or who have not yet been sentenced to time in prison are referred to CHR to receive substance abuse treatment, treatment for domestic violence, and treatment for DUI. And that continuing funding for those programs and not decreasing funding and even increasing funding, that people who complete the programs that are provided, the recidivism rate for rearrest falls from about 45% to about 24%. So it's really a great service. And I want to just advocate for continuing that support.
Thank you very much. Are there any comments or questions for Ms. Doba? Seeing none. Thank you so much. Up next is Kathleen DeShanes.
Hi, good evening. Good evening, Senator Austin, Representative Walker, Senator Minor, Representative France, and the distinguished members of the Appropriations Committee. I'm happy to be here with you tonight. This is my first time testifying, so really hope I get it right. I am the CEO of Connecticut Renaissance. We're a human service organization that provides mental health, addiction, and criminal justice services throughout New Haven and Fairfield counties. We serve over 3,000 people a year, adults, adolescents, and families. And tonight I'm here to testify on behalf of Bill 6439, and I am requesting that the legislature increase the funding by $461 million over 5 years for community nonprofits. Since 1967, Connecticut Renaissance has provided services that are funded through the Department of Corrections, the Court Support Services Division, Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services, and federal probation. Over the last 13 years, the cost of providing services has risen disproportionately to the level of funding that our organization receives. And it's become incumbent upon us to, fundraise in order to make up the gap. However, the gap has grown just too large for nonprofits to meet. Because of that, we've had to make reductions in staff and reductions in many other areas, wherever possible. There are just no further cuts that we can make without compromising our services, our clients' needs, and the general safety of our programs. With our DOC contract, we operate 3 work release programs. We serve about 170 men at any given time. We've served probably about 27,000 men over the 30 years that we've provided this service. The staff that work for these programs earn anywhere from $13.74 an hour to $15 an hour. They provide case management services. They assist clients to interview and find jobs. They act as liaisons and primary care doctors, mental health and addiction therapists, and prescribers. As there's a high incidence of opioid use among this population, our staff are armed with Narcan in order to revive an individual who has overdosed on heroin. Our staff may find an individual unconscious with difficulty breathing. They may be pale or with bluish skin, have erratic heartbeat, and uncommunicative. So imagine taking on the responsibility to administer a medication, hoping to bring a man back to life. It's truly a daunting responsibility. Usually after an incident like this, our staff experience trauma, knowing that if they weren't in the right place at the right time, one of their clients may have died. So for an average of $14 an hour, one can choose to do this kind of work, or for the same amount, you can be a cashier at Home Depot or maybe a barista at Starbucks. Our staff need to be paid a competitive wage for the level of responsibility they assume at Connecticut Renaissance and at all nonprofits. Within our current DOC contract for work release programs, we're given funding to provide 3 meals a day for the men that we serve. The food is next to salaries, food is our second largest expense. The funding.
Mr. Shanes, it's 3 minutes, so can you wrap up?
Sure. Just want to point out that this boils down to $4.65 a day to provide 3 meals to grown men, which is probably the average cost of a large flavored coffee at Starbucks. So it's incumbent upon us to, solicit donations from grocery stores and warehouses and what have you, just to meet these basic biological needs. We care deeply about the people that we serve. We work tirelessly to meet their needs. We sacrifice, we go without pay increases, we cut benefits. We're savvy, frugal, creative, and determined, and we will not give up. And now we're asking you not to give up on us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shanes. Are there any comments or questions? Seeing none, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Up next is Cara Rochelle.
Hi, thank you. To Senator Austin, Representative Walker, Senator Minor, Representative Frantz, and my esteemed colleagues on the Appropriations Committee, thank you for hearing me this evening. I'm here to speak about the specific provision within HB 6439 that brings $1.2 million in increased funding to the Waterbury rail line. I want to express my strong and enthusiastic support for this provision and share with you a little bit about the Naugatuck Valley. To start with, this valley used to be the economic driver for the state of Connecticut in its heyday. In recent times, it is the towns along the line are the first, second, 5th and 22nd most economically distressed in the state of Connecticut. My district, in my towns, we are the 1st and 5th. We have ALICE rates in Ansonia of 60%, and that's pre-COVID. Now, post-COVID, we're looking at 70–80% of our residents who are really struggling to cover their basic bills. Beyond the economic distress of the region, we're looking at median income rates that are $30,000, $40,000 below the state average. It's just really, we're really looking for opportunity. But in recent years, we have had some real glimmers of hope. There was a $120 million investment in the Waterbury rail line to create passing sidings and to put positive train control in. This investment was so that we could have more than one train on our track. So with this investment, we are now ready for the next step. This $1.2 million for increased service in the rail line would give us the ability to put the trains passing each other on the tracks and make us viable for transportation-oriented development in our downtowns. This process has started. Investors have come in. We have some apartment buildings that are being put in within walking distance, in fact, within view of the train stations. And we have additional areas for redevelopment that are walking distance to the train lines that that we're just waiting for investors on. And they're saying to us, when are the trains coming in? When are we getting the increased service? 2 years ago and last year, particularly last year, we had investors that testified in front of the Transportation Committee about their interest in developing along the Waterbury line up and down the line as soon as we have this increased service. So this investment increased service would directly cause a cascade of economic growth for this region that would put everyone onto more stable ground, create more jobs. And this is really just timely. We're going to have our tracks completed just as these funds are slated to be released. So I urge all of you to please support this, this provision within the bill. It is incredibly important to several towns that certainly could use this increase in service, and it would go to good use and spur true change of life for our community.
Thank you, Representative. Are there any comments or questions for Representative Rochelle? Seeing none, thank you so much. Appreciate you coming.
Thank you.
Up next is Julia Wilcox.
Yes, good evening, Senator Austin, Representative Walker, ranking members and distinguished members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify this evening. My name is Julia Wilcox, Manager of Advocacy and Public Policy for the Connecticut Community Nonprofit Alliance. The Alliance is the statewide advocacy organization representing the nonprofit sector. Community nonprofits provide essential services to over 500,000 individuals and families in Connecticut each year and employ 14% of Connecticut's workforce. We respectfully request that the legislature increase funding by $461 million over 5 years for community nonprofits. Over the last 13 years, nonprofits have lost at least this total in state funding that has not kept pace with inflation or adequately covered increased costs and demand for services. We urge you to please consider the recommendations as outlined in my written testimony. And basically, these recommendations speak to the process to implement the funding over 5 years, indexing the increases to inflation, and holding nonprofits financially harmless from the impact of the pandemic. My testimony also includes the white paper of the Alliance, which provides supporting data and details regarding the funding request for the $461 million, including the methodology. You have my written testimony before you, and I'd like to focus on just a few key areas within my testimony. According to the January 2021 OPM monthly indicators, community providers are serving approximately 4,000 people in programs which are funded by DOC, a greater than 30% increase from 2014. Thousands more receive services through providers that contract with CSSD. Over the past 5 years, while the prison population has fallen to historic lows, demand for community services has increased, and yet funding has been cut over time by nearly 15% or $5.8 million with no increase in the proposed budget. Specific to DOC, we commend the governor for his commitment to the closure of Northern and additional units and facilities as outlined in the Create Savings Initiative. These proposals will, in total, will achieve a savings of $21 million in fiscal year 22 and $47 million in fiscal year 23. However, the proposed budget does not appropriate these savings to support criminal justice reforms. The Alliance urges the legislature to reinvest these savings into programs that focus on recidivism reduction, prison alternatives, and support for victims of crime, in keeping with the nationally recognized justice reinvestment initiatives. And I'd like to comment that Senator Austin, in your conversations this afternoon with Commissioner Cueros, you spoke so passionately about the need for behavioral health services within the criminal justice arena. And these are exactly the type of programs that would be supported through a justice reinvestment initiative. And finally, my testimony includes recommendations around the CSSD budget in opposition to 2 key funding reductions. And again, I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Julia. Appreciate that. Are there any comments or questions for Julia?
Yes, I'm sorry, Kathy.
Representative Walker.
You said that there are 2 reductions in CSSD for services? Julia?
Yes, I'm sorry. So the reductions in CSSD are in 2 key areas that I believe were mentioned earlier as well. I apologize, I took that out of my condensed version here. We request.
What were the reductions? That's all I wanted to know.
Oh, I'm sorry. We oppose the reduction of 1 million from the consolidation of the youthful offender services line item.
Okay.
And there is a 2 million, I believe, a 200,000, I apologize, 200,000 reduction to the AIC line item. And these are included in my full written testimony.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. I never think people pay attention to what we say to the agencies, so that was nice to hear. Appreciate that.
Thank you so very much.
Next up is Kirsten Levinson.
Good evening, committee chairs, ranking members, and members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Kirsten Levinson, and I'm the Executive Director of New Haven Reads, a nonprofit that supports children's literacy. We're extremely grateful for the support of $50,000 a year that we received from the judicial branch for each of the past 2 years. These funds are essential to the important work that we do. I'm here today to request that these dollars remain in the budget. And given that some of our usual sources of funds have been diverted to support COVID relief, we would be thrilled to receive more. New Haven Reads provides free one-on-one science-based literacy for struggling readers. Our program is highly effective, demonstrated by assessment data, parent accolades, and students' proud smiles. Prior to the pandemic, we worked with over 550 children every week, and we expect to be reaching that many again in the next school year. Literacy education is anti-poverty work. It is racial equity work. Whether a child can read or not, in a very real way, determines his or her destiny. On average, 55% of third graders who are struggling with reading will fail to graduate from high school without an intervention like New Haven Reads. A child who learns to read is more likely to finish high school, to go to college, get a good job, and be a taxpayer. He will have better health outcomes, and he is much less likely to be incarcerated. New Haven Reads changes the trajectory of students' lives. Our literacy program more than pays for itself down the road. Last spring, we pivoted to a fully online learning program. We're now working with almost 300 children every week. We gave laptops to students and have provided internet connectivity to families where needed. We distributed bags of supplies, including headphones and whiteboards and books to support our students' learning. We started a new intensive pilot program in the fall to work with those students who are 2 or 3 years below their expected reading level and not showing any progress. Our pre-K and kindergarten programs support critical pre-literacy skills, and our book bank has distributed thousands of books to build home libraries. We have been supporting our students in every way we can. Even before COVID-19, there were persistent achievement gaps and profound inequities in our education system. The pandemic has made it all so much worse. Early research studies demonstrate that although all students are experiencing learning loss at this time, it is the students of color and the low-income students who are most affected, with up to a year of learning loss. This will have a very real impact on their future academic success and future earnings. Our students are all amazing young men and women, aged 4 to 18, who are working hard to become competent, successful readers. 98% of our students are minorities, and 89% are from low or very low income households. These are the students who are most affected by COVID-19 and the educational inequities that will remain. These students need and deserve this support. To be a strong, vibrant, flourishing state, our children obviously must be able to read. New Haven Reads is an important part of that work, and I urge you to please make sure that New Haven Reads is in the budget for next year and beyond. Thank you. I'm happy to take your questions.
Thank you, Kirsten. Are there any comments or questions? Seeing none, thank you so much. Appreciate you coming. Judge Norris, you are now up.
Good evening, members of the committee. My name is Chuck Norris, and I've been happy to serve as the Norwich Regional Probate Judge for now just a little over 10 years. And it's also my pleasure to be here after my third or fourth year before the committee. As I have stated in the past, before becoming probate judge, the impression I had about what people did at probate court was really that they argued about wills, trusts, and money. And that's a common belief held by most lawyers and non-lawyers who ask me, what do I do as a probate judge? Soon after my election, it didn't take long for the opinion that I had to be revealed to be far different from the reality once I started doing hearings. I quickly learned that the probate courts are much closer to that of a social service agency. I easily spend over 80% of my time hearing cases that have nothing to do with wills or trusts, and frankly, nothing to do with money. An overwhelming majority of my time are spent hearing cases involving family issues and cases and matters with people who are in need of some help. I can assure that anyone who has not spent an extended period of time in the probate court, that their beliefs of what I do or what we do there is probably mistaken. Judge Wexler talked a little bit earlier, and I'll tell you that before the COVID crisis, my typical day at the Norwich court doesn't start at the court, but would start at a local hospital doing psychiatric hearings for patients there, or up at the hospital, possibly appointing conservators to make medical decisions. I'd also attend hearings on a regular basis at nursing homes, or under some circumstances at the home of someone who cannot make it to the court because of transportation or some other limitations. And obviously, I also hold hearings at the court. Those hearings are on a daily basis, with issues ranging from simply changing a person's name, appointing a guardian, terminating parental rights, affecting parental rights, performing adoptions, or any number of matters. The typical week, very seldom, involves any type of will contest or estate issue. As you may know, Norwich is not a wealthy city, and there are many needs. And the court is involved in many of those needs, especially when it comes to children and the elderly, the developmentally disabled, and those who are in need of psychiatric help. Just to give you a few examples, one of the most time-consuming things that I have, and one of the most frequent things that we deal with, are conservatorships. And for people who are not familiar with conservators, I tell them it's kind of like a court-appointed power of attorney, combined with the determination that the person being conserved can no longer handle their own affairs. The appointment of the conservator is done from elderly people to younger people struggling with mental health issues, and the requests come from many different areas and entities. I have requests for conservatorships from relatives, hospitals, social service agencies, and at times even municipalities. And in many of those situations, the person being conserved has a family member or friends or someone that can help out and be the conservator and be court appointed to represent that.
that individual. But in a lot of cases, we don't have a family member. And without the probate court involvement, I think the results would be disastrous. Common situation that arises is a person who's in a nursing home, and they may have been there for quite an extended period of time. They may not have family members who are either able, knowledgeable, or willing to help out. And there may be someone at the nursing home that realizes this person may not need the extent and the degree of care that's being provided. And in those cases, the nursing homes might come to the probate court seeking a conservator and to enable us to appoint someone to get them out of the nursing home and avoid a $12,000 a month expense.
Judge,
Other
can you
times I'm
wrap
called
up
to the
for
hospital
me?
to
Judge, could you wrap it up for me, please? Thank
Okay.
you.
Programs like such as Money Follows the Person, who get people out of the nursing homes and into the communities, are great. But unfortunately, if they don't have someone to help them, we don't have the ability to use those programs. Throughout the COVID crisis, the courts have been, as Judge Wexler said, operating on a daily basis. And I'm concerned that without the probate courts, we don't know where many of these people would be and would be lost and maybe fall between the cracks. I thank you for your continued support throughout the years. I provided some written testimony and additional information, and I'm happy to answer any questions now or at any time in the future. Thank you again for your consideration.
Thank you, Judge. Are there any comments or questions for Judge Norris? Thanks for all you do for Norwich, Judge. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Same too.
I'm sorry, I got questions. I can't, I was trying to raise my hand, but I got questions.
Representative Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you. Good evening, Judge. I got questions about conservators, especially for seniors. Those seniors there, sometimes they end up in a convalescent homes. Why is so hard when family members, sometimes they appoint a conservator without sometimes talking to the family. And I got families that when they try to get rid of the conservator, the court always gives these people a hard time. Now, I was involved in a case, and I thought that I was living in the, I don't know, Wild West. I don't know, somewhere, out of this world. When they appoint a conservator, knowing that they got family, the family they are willing to be the conservator. And then this conservator, they take over the finances and everything, properties, money, everything. And then family, they're not, sometimes these conservators, when these seniors, they end up in a convalescent home. They give orders to the convalescent home, not allowing the family to go and see the patient. And what I notice is that this is like a business. Conservators, they take over. If the patient died, they take over everything, and they decide what's going to happen. And in my opinion, Judge, I will say the court has to do a better job. First, when they appoint a conservator. Second, they have to be sure that they don't have nobody in the family want to be the conservator. And third, I don't think that is fair that a person work all their life and they end up losing everything because that conservator take over everything, property, money, and everything. Now, you as a judge, and you're saying that you can say that this is working. They can appoint a guardian ad litem. They can or appoint a conservator, and everything is working. We got problems in the probate court, especially with the seniors and the conservator. How can we make this better?
And I can tell you from my personal perspective for the last 10 years is that if ever I can appoint a family member, I almost always, and two different issues. One, and you can have different conservators, some for financial matters, some from personal matters. So I'll stick with the personal matters. If I have to appoint a conservator to make medical decisions, I have very seldom, and I cannot think of almost any circumstances where, unless there's some horrible chaos in a family, I would appoint a stranger to make medical decisions for a family member rather than a family member. I would not want a stranger making medical decisions for my father when either my or my sister are there. So that, as far as the medical decisions. Financial matters, I'll tell you, unfortunately, very few of the people that we're talking about that go into nursing homes, especially in my area at least, have finances that last very long when the nursing homes are $12,000 a month. But again, I actually have a hard time finding people willing to be conservators who are not family members. So in other words, when there isn't a family member, I beg them to please have a family member, because it's very difficult to find lawyers or non-lawyers to serve as conservators, at least in my area. So I can tell you from my experience, and at least in my court and to my observations, almost always try to find a family member, because it's not going to cost the family any money of the person. I always, and the default rules is that if possible, not appoint a conservator, to keep the person unconserved if the family members can do it. And the statute says if the family members can do it by a power of attorney or some other method, they shouldn't even need a conservator. But I can tell you that my experience is we try to appoint a family member unless a family member has stolen. There are circumstances, but that's my experience.
And you're right when you say the state statute says they have to do everything in their power to find a family member. But most of the time, this is not happening. And when these seniors, they end up in a convalescent home, and the family, they want to remove them, to take them out, because these seniors are begging the family, get me out of here. It's impossible. And they try. I've been involved, I don't know how many times. And it's so hard when a senior that is in a convalescent home and they are doing good, they don't need to stay there in that place. It's so hard to get them out. First is the convalescent home, and second is the conservator. And one of my passions is the seniors. They work all their life, and now it's time for us to take care of them. And we're failing to these seniors. We're failing these seniors. These seniors, I go to convalescent home, you can see seniors crying because they want to get out. You got members of the family, they are begging, looking for help because they can't do anything because the conservator is pushing for them to stay. And when they die, and I was involved in a case, when they die, they take everything. They take, money, and they end up selling their property. How come probate court can allow a conservator to sell the property that they are not the owners, sell the property and do that? Oh, I know. I'm very passionate about this.
I know you are. I love your passion, Representative Gonzalez, but I don't want to get off on a tangent. So, and I know that each probate court is a little bit different. So I just want to say that, Judge Norris, did you want to say something else?
And Representative Gonzalez, this is one of the areas that I am always very interested in, and I'm happy to take your call anytime and talk to you about it, because I'd be very interested in anything.
And I will call you because I think that I'm looking.
And she will.
I would be happy to. I have a lot of thoughts about it as well. Thank you.
Okay.
I don't know if anybody else had any questions.
I don't think so. I think everybody else is all set, Judge. Thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you in Norwich. Judge Wright, you're up next.
Thank you. Members of the committee, my name is Phil Wright. For 28 years, I've been the town of Wallingford's probate judge and have served the probate system and the Connecticut Probate Assembly in many capacities. I've never been more cognizant of the essential role the probate courts play in people's lives than I have been in this past year. Conservatorship matters have increased significantly, and people under conservatorship are most frequently and directly affected by the restrictions necessitated by the COVID-19 pandemic. Many of these folks reside in skilled nursing or other congregate housing, which have restricted visits. In many cases, it's become increasingly challenging and costly for court-appointed conservators and attorneys to maintain contact with the individuals whose rights and well-being they are obligated to protect. But it has never been more important to provide that contact and oversight. Now, during the course of this pandemic, the number of children's matters has not risen, and frankly, that is a cause for concern. You know, a significant number of the children's cases in our courts originate from the observations of teachers, social workers, and other school-based professionals. And many schools are not yet engaged in full-time in-person learning. And we know as well that DCF has for some time reduced its in-home visits. I certainly fear a significant increase in our children's matters as this virus abates and we return to normal functioning in our institutions. You know, in the same way, many folks, especially but not limited to the elderly, have been isolated in their own homes during this time. And we know that isolation can be a cause of depression as well as a curtain which hides mental health issues from friends and family. Unlike many entities, the probate courts have not been closed during these trying times. Even when the municipal buildings which typically provide space for our courts have been closed to the public, we've been continuing to conduct hearings via video conference from our homes and offices when necessary. Although we have been legally relieved by executive order of the obligation to conduct hearings within the usual statutory time periods, we've continued to do the essential and often emergency work that we are morally obligated to do. Could I tell the family of a young man at Gaylord Hospital suffering from a traumatic brain injury that we can appoint someone to help make treatment decisions for him when the virus is under control? Or the family member of an elderly parent living alone who can't manage his food and medications any longer? What about the patient being held in the psych unit at Masonic Health Center who wants a hearing to determine whether she should be released from that locked facility? Or the child who's being poorly cared for, if at all, by a parent suffering from a substance use disorder? These are examples of real cases that I deal with every week, and every probate court deals with them as well. Now, I know Judge Straight-Kafalis, our probate court administrator, testified earlier regarding the wonderful value the probate courts represent to our state. We're struggling to provide the constitutionally mandated representation, which is increasing at 5% each year, to which our parties are entitled. Please support our courts, our judges and staff, as well as the conservators and attorneys who provide direct services to our indigent parties by fully funding the probate administrator's budget request. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Judge. Are there any comments or questions for Judge Wright?
I got comments, and I'm sorry, I can't, I'm trying to raise my hand, but yeah. Okay.
All right. Just don't repeat what you just said.
I won't. Listen, I got a lot of issues with this, so.
Okay. Go on to the next topic then.
Okay. Good evening, Judge Wright. I got a couple of questions. And my first question is, how do you see in the Latino community, like patient, you know, that you have to appoint guardians ad litem to Latino? How you see that the percent of that? It is high or what?
The number of people in the Latino community who need to have
right.
You know, I would say it's probably the equivalent of the rest of the population. I don't find that the Latino, as a matter of fact, the Latino community, from my observation, often takes very good care of their own family members and friends. So I don't see an increased number of people. If I'm understanding your question.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you preside in where?
I'm in Wallingford.
Wallingford. Okay. Now, when the court appoint a conservator, do the court sit down with the patient and the members of the family? Do they explain the role of a conservator? Because as far as I know, when I get involved sometimes, the person that they said, but they never explain what is a conservator, and they don't explain the role of a conservator. Even the patient said, I don't know, they appoint a conservator, they didn't explain it. Now, if they are not doing that, and I'm trying to pass a bill, and that's what I'm looking for, I want to be sure that the court sit down with the patient and family members and explain what is a conservator and why that is happening. Because you have a lot of experience, what do you recommend?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's important that that be done. And frankly, it's my belief that it is done. I certainly sit down with the family members who are, given notice of the hearings, and the patient or the respondent, if they're if they're able to come to the court. If not, we always appoint an attorney to represent that individual, and that attorney as well, speaks to them and explains the role of conservatorship and of a conservator, and is obligated to argue against the appointment of a conservator if that's what the respondent wants them to do.
And why is so hard when the family, they go to court and they try to get rid of that conservator, including the patient, and the court gives them a hard time? Why?
Oh my goodness. Honestly, it's a difficult situation that judges find themselves in, because, we are obligated to appoint a conservator if we really feel that the individual is not capable of managing their personal or financial affairs. And so, there are times when family members don't want a conservator, but the court is convinced that the person is not able to manage their own affairs. And it's our statutory obligation to make certain that we do have somebody appointed to help the person.
Thank you, Judge, and God help me, because I don't want to reach that age here in the United States. Thank you anyway for your answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions for the judge? Seeing none, thank you very much, Judge Wright.
Thank you.
Next up is Leslie Foltz.
She is not present, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Next up is Judge Graves. Judge Graves.
Good evening.
There you are. Go ahead,
Here.
Judge.
Can you hear me? Okay, good.
Yep.
I apologize for the technical difficulties. Good evening, Honorable Chair, Senator Austin, Senator Representative Edmonds Walker, committee members, and especially acknowledgement to Representative Edmonds Walker after her successful bout with COVID and her belated 30th birthday wishes as well. I'm here this evening as judge of Connecticut's busiest probate court to give homage and praise to the judges, clerks, and staffers of the Connecticut probate court system for their collective efforts in service and sacrifice to our state in the throes of this COVID pandemic. While most private and public sector agencies and entities were forced to close, probate courts remained open for business via video conferencing. Yes, physical public access was prohibited, but turbo filing, e-filing, faxes, Pony Express mail, and even socially distant drop-offs kept a flood of petitions and motions for end-of-life orders, conservatorships, an alarming number of mental health commitments, wills, trusts, guardianships, name changes, adoptions, parental right issues, etc., inundating our offices. This while our own clerks and judges had to battle the nefarious COVID virus within their own family and extended family circles, enduring life disruptions, sicknesses, and even death. In New Haven, the courageous, committed soldiers of both probate courts on Orange and State Streets labored with staggered schedules and endured the challenge of filing what seemed like hundreds of petitions from nursing homes and hospitals in those first months of the pandemic, seeking court authority to either put patients on or remove them from ventilators, endure the agony of pain of families trying to navigate the probate system after unexpectedly losing a loved one to COVID. Yes, the tears of a 40-year-old seeking guidance after losing both mother and father within 1 week to COVID. But this is who we are. This is what we do. Serve with competence and compassion. Competence and compassion. And thanks to you, our kinship and respite program continues to provide much needed relief to so many. Let me tell you quickly about Mr. Jerome. Mr. Jerome, a grandfather, guardian of 3 grandchildren, one of whom was a cancer survivor and an amputee, a 12-year-old. Mr. Jerome got COVID, lost his job, came looking for help. Our respite fund assisted him with utilities and groceries and helped him navigate, as he said, make his load a little lighter. Then let me tell you about Miss Luzelle. Miss Luzelle, tragic story, lost her daughter at the age of 33, a substance abuse addict to heroin and PCP, left a four-year-old who was born into this world because of his mother's addiction, with heart and lung issues, had kidney cancer at birth, and autistic. 4-year-old was left to his grandmother, Miss Luzelle, who sought help and needed assistance. She came to us, our probate court, to our kinship and respite fund that you assist us with, and asked for help. We were able to get a bed for the child, get clothes for the child, groceries for the family. Ms. Mullins again said to us in tears, she wouldn't know what she would have done without our program. But once again, this is what we do. This is who we are. The probate court, the people's court. It was Dr. King who challenged us all. Life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? What are you doing for others? Madam Chairs, committee members, I ask that you continue to fund us at a level which will enable us to continue to do for others. Thank you very much, and have a good evening.
Thank you, Judge. Are there any comments or questions? Representative Walker. I just knew she was going to say something.
You forgot.
Good evening, Judge Gray.
That's okay. I get called that name all the time.
Yeah, thank you for coming out here and testifying. I mean, I have to say the New Haven Probate Court is one of a kind, and I think between you and Judge Keys, we've always provided the services for the community. So I thank you for taking the time to come and give us some of those stories, and also letting people know that Respite Care Fund is one of the best things that we do in New Haven to try and support the people in our communities that struggle. So thank you very much.
Absolutely.
For your hard
Thank you,
work.
Representative Evans Walker. Happy 30th birthday.
Don't go anywhere, Judge. Representative Gonzalez.
Yes, I'm sure
Yeah.
she does. Yes.
Judge Grace, thank you for being with us today. And I'm happy that I heard Representative Walker saying that you guys are doing a very good job in New Haven. I think that maybe we can move you out of New Haven. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah.
No, he stays there.
No.
Well, I'm just kidding. But anyway, Judge, I would say when you said that the court never closed,
yes.
and all the meetings, it was through Zoom meetings and all of that.
Yes.
Now, when you talk about the system, how you guys were working to be sure that everybody was taken care of. Now, my question is, the minority community, that they don't know how to navigate in the system, that they don't know how to use a computer, that they don't have a computer. How you guys that were taking care of this family, when it was impossible for them to get into a Zoom meeting or something like that?
Well, Representative Gonzalez, I thank you for the question. It's a good question, and that has been a challenge from the outset of this pandemic. It's with the closing of the courts and limited access to the courts. So we've done as good a job as we could to get the word out through our staffers, through various community organizations that we're open, and that those who have limited access to the computers, they can call in. So whenever there's a hearing, well, first of all, our offices are open for phone calls, even though there's limited physical access. Individuals can still call the probate court office and get guidance and direction about what forms to complete, how to get them to us. And in fact, even those who have issues with mailing or even using computers, our staffers will actually meet individuals at the front door at 200 Orange Street. They can turn the forms in. We'll accept them hand to hand and bring them in and process them and communicate them with individuals accordingly. So we're making every effort we can to let people know we're open and that the courts are still accessible to those who have limited access to computer technology. But in every instance where there's a hearing, if you don't have a computer, you still can call, because almost everyone, as you know, has a phone or access to a phone, and they can call in and join us and be a part of the hearings through a cell phone or an iPhone.
And what happened with the seniors, they own property? what is the process? What have you been doing in New Haven? With this seniors that they got property and conservators, they sell their property. What can we do something different? Can you say something about it?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Well, we have conservators that they are appointed by the court, and we got seniors that they own property. When they go to the convalescent home or they have a conservator, right away, most of the seniors end up losing their property because the conservator, they sell their property. And I don't know, I don't see a reason why they are doing that.
Yes, ma'am. Well, if I could quickly address that, I know time is of the essence, but here's the thing, and I speak for all of my fellow judges who have testified earlier this evening. The procedure is this. First of all, a conservator cannot do anything with anyone else's property without getting permission from the court. So if someone is in a nursing home or in a hospital and the conservator has oversight, as conservator of the estate, to manage that person's land or property or pay the rent, whatever it might be, even in terms of paying the rent or whatever it might be, that person, that conservator has to come to the judge, to the court, have a hearing to ask permission from the court to dispose of property, dispose of personal belongings, to sell the property, to terminate the lease. All those are required. And if that doesn't happen, then there's a problem. But in every court, there's a requirement. No conservatorship is allowed to take any type of action without getting court approval. And that's something we would agree. We have to monitor. I think all judges would agree, and our clerks, we have to monitor that more closely. But that is part of the process and procedure of probate court. You have to have permission. You can't dispose of anyone's property without court permission. And oftentimes, and I think you raised this question earlier, when those hearings are conducted, the family members are notified. We make sure that the family members are involved and engaged and have an input in those hearings whenever possible.
Well, thank you, Judge Reyes. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you for your court. Thank you for your passion and your concern. Thank you, Representative.
Are there any other questions for Judge Graves? Seeing none, thank you very much, Judge. Have a nice night.
Thank you,
Next, Oscar Suarez.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Co-Chair and distinguished members. My name is Oscar Suarez, and I'm pleased to be able to speak to you tonight as both a member of the Board of New Haven Reads and as a proud parent of a New Haven Reads student. To begin, I would like to thank you for the generous support New Haven Reads has received in the form of $50,000 from the Judicial Branch for the last 2 years. As a member of the board, I can attest to the fact that this money has supported hundreds of children in New Haven Reads' endeavor to promote childhood literacy. During these difficult times, New Haven Reads' dedication to our most vulnerable community is more imperative than ever. Our schools and teachers are overwhelmed with the added difficulties that hybrid models and remote learning brings, which has exposed a disproportionate amount of children of color to an ever-widening achievement gap. But fortunately, many of these children have New Haven Reads to provide them with the one-on-one support that they need to overcome these difficulties. As a parent of a New Haven Reads student, I can personally speak to that. There's nothing harder as a parent than to see your child's spirits start to dim because of their lack of confidence at school. I will never forget the day when my 8-year-old son, Jack, asked me why he could not read as well as other students in his class, even though he was working as hard as they were. At that moment, I felt helpless. Jack was already receiving additional support at school, but simply was not enough. That's when the dedicated tutors in New Haven Reads stepped in. Jack's tutor, Miss Robin, through individual intervention, has helped Jack find the confidence he needs to rekindle his light. With her support, Jack feels that not only can he be a reader, but he can be successful at school. And now, while I'm putting my daughter to bed, I can hear Jack reading to himself in another room. I hear Jack telling his friends about a book he read, and Jack even asked for books as Christmas and birthday gifts. New Haven Reads has given Jack and all the children it serves a sense of self-confidence that will allow them to pursue their dreams. I recognize that there are many great organizations in Connecticut that need the state's financial support. However, I would implore you to consider the fundamental impact that reading has on your daily life. the lasting consequences for the children and communities of the greater New Haven area if they were not provided the services of New Haven Reads. So please consider New Haven Reads in the next budget for further support from the judicial branch. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you very much, Oscar. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none? Thank you. Appreciate you coming. Next up is Julie Lister.
Madam Chair, I'm going to assist Julie because I continue to learn the difference between webinars and Zoom meetings. And so I'm not sure that Julie will be able to share the video, so I'm going to give it a whirl.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, fingers crossed.
Okay, before you turn it on, Susan, I just want to say explain one thing.
Sure,
So I
Julie.
just want to say good evening to everyone and thank you for this opportunity. My name is Julie Lister and I work at Solar Youth. And Solar Youth is a community nonprofit in New Haven, and it's focused on positive youth development, helping youth in the short and long term with lifelong success. It is anti-poverty work, and we are grateful for the funds that we received through the judicial branch, also in the amount of $50,000, and we urge you to continue supporting our organization in this manner. What the video I'm about to show you is our program director really wanted to be here in person to testify, and she wasn't able to, so she created a video. That's what we're going to show now.
So Julie, give it a whirl. You try, and if it doesn't work,
Okay,
then
I'll
do it,
try.
okay?
Okay, I'll try.
Okay.
Okay, let's see.
We can't hear her.
Yeah, we can't hear it, Julie.
You can't hear her?
No.
Okay.
All right. Let me
That's too
try.
bad.
Let me try, Julie.
Okay.
We'll give it one more try. So you stop screen
Okay.
sharing and I'll give it a whirl.
Okay, one sec.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just trying to stop the screen share. It's not. Okay, here we go.
There
Sorry
you
about
go.
that. Okay, go ahead.
There you go. Okay. Let me give it a whirl.
Okay.
Can you hear it?
No.
No.
You can send it out
No.
to the Appropriations Committee.
So that's what I'll do, Julie. I will send the link. I will send the link out to everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Julie, do you have anything else?
No, if you can watch that video, that will say it all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Are there any comments or questions for Julie? Seeing none. Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Administrator. Up next
Thank
is
you.
Stacy Lawton. Go ahead, Stacy, you're up.
Good evening, Senator Austin, Representative Walker, Senator Minor, Representative France, and distinguished members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Stacy Lawton, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer for the Southeastern Council on Alcoholism and Drug Dependence, more commonly known as SCAD. SCAD is a nonprofit agency that provides quality mental health and substance abuse treatment to individuals who may not be able to afford treatment otherwise. Altogether, SCAD provides a continuum of treatment services in Southeastern Connecticut that includes 157 beds. We also provide outpatient behavioral health services and community outreach and education surrounding the dangers of alcoholism and drug addiction. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on House Bill 6439. Community nonprofits provide essential services in every city and every town in Connecticut, serving people in need and employing tens of thousands. Since 2007, community nonprofits have lost at least $461 million in state funding that has not kept pace with inflation or adequately covered costs and the demand for services over the last 13 years. I ask that you please commit to increasing funding by $461 million over the next 5 years, adjust increases to account for inflation, and hold nonprofits financially harmless for the impact of COVID-19. The COVID-19 pandemic forced our agency to reduce capacity in all of our residential programs to allow for compliance with CDC recommendations. It created staffing shortages as our employees fell ill with COVID or decided that reporting to work was not worth risking their lives. We found ourselves helping our clients to cope with stress, anxiety, and sometimes unimaginable loss while managing our own stress, anxiety, and losses. The COVID-19 pandemic exacerbated the impact of inadequate funding for nonprofit services and brought unanticipated costs and operational challenges. Chronic underfunding has resulted in SCAD's inability to hire and retain qualified staff. It's also led to a degradation of critical infrastructure within our programs. In 2019, our agency was the victim of a ransomware attack that resulted from an antiquated IT system that had been neglected for years. The required security upgrades were simply unaffordable. In 2020, in the middle of COVID, we were forced to reduce our contracted CSSD beds by 50%. Over the past 10 years, we have cut employee benefits, eliminated employer-paid disability insurance, life insurance, and eliminated the 3% match to our employee retirement accounts. We have reduced the number of paid holidays and capped the amount of vacation time that can be carried forward. We've been forced to balance our budgets year after year on the backs of our employees, many of whom are making minimum wage. The demand for substance abuse and mental health treatment continues to increase as funding is cut. In closing, I ask that you please oppose the consolidation proposal that reduces the CSSD budget by $1 million and oppose the reduction of the $200,000 to the AIC line item. These cost savings should be reinvested to strengthen the essential network of continuing AIC services. Thank you for your consideration and for your anticipated commitment to funding our critical services in the nonprofit sector.
Thank you very much, Stacy. Appreciate you coming. And is Jack Malone works there?
Jack is retired.
I know, I heard he's retired, but I heard he still comes in now and again, does he?
He does come in now and again, but he's really planning to try and get some travel time in after COVID. So
very good. Are there any comments or questions? Seeing none, thank you so much, Stacy.
Thank you.
Up next is Linas Orozco.
She is not present, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Next up after that is Michael Askew.
Yes, good evening, Senator Olson and Representative Walker. It's a pleasure to be before this committee, to all the distinguished committee members. I'm actually in a public place, but I hope you don't hear a lot of background. I've been at the SEEK organization for about 20 years, a nonprofit that supports the recovery from substance use for those that have alcohol and addiction problems. And we have done a lot of good work in the state through our recovery support services. Today, I'd like to just comment a couple of things about the corrections, Department of Corrections budget, in particular, the closing of Northern Correctional. And certainly the state will benefit from that savings with dollars. But once again, it's about community reinvestment. And certainly another line item that I'd like to share is that we understand the impact that COVID has made in our state. But more importantly, I would hope that the Department of Corrections would be willing to look at, certainly with the reduced budget because of the closing of these facilities, support the communities with the recovery organizations that are really working hard to help the reentry of those individuals. A lot of them are leaving themselves in situations where they can't access housing. Employment is very challenging. And I just want to just comment that, I just heard that there was about 50 citizens incarcerated in Northern and there was 175 correctional officers in that facility. And so once again, we've seen a reduction of people being released from these facilities. I think it was over 5,000 in the last 3 or 4 years. And just last year in March 1st, another 3,300. But I would certainly hope that the Department of Corrections would certainly support the justice reinvestment of dollars coming back into the community. And I think that's really my only focus of discussion tonight. I really thank the committee for all the hard work you do in preparation for this budget, but certainly think about the people that the disproportionate effect that has made on the people that have been harmed by this justice system the most. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. Are there any comments or questions for Mr. Askew? Seeing none, have a nice night, sir. Have a nice weekend.
You too, guys. Thank you.
Next up is Kelly Moore.
Thank you. Senator Austin, Representative Walker, Ranking Members Meyer and France, and distinguished members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Kelly Moore. I'm the Interim Senior Policy Counsel for the ACLU of Connecticut. We are an organization dedicated to ending mass incarceration and the disparate effects of mass incarceration on Black and Brown Connecticut residents. One of the best uses of funds in Connecticut is to divest from policing and incarceration and reallocate those funds back into people and communities harmed by the systemically racist institutions of policing and mass incarceration. Even absent divestment, investing into reducing harmful policing and ending mass incarceration are among the best uses of funds for Connecticut. The governor has committed to closing Northern Correctional Institution by the summer of 2021, saving approximately $12.6 million in annual operating costs. The governor's budget reallocates that money into a poorly defined Creates Fund, which appears to be used to close the tax gap and other general fund purposes. Northern is a prison that has perpetrated great harm to incarcerated people, and the money saved from closing it should not be directed at potholes and pensions, but instead should be reallocated into tangible benefits for people caught up in the criminal legal system. These benefits include increased access to healthcare and better funded healthcare services. For people inside, these healthcare investments should fund both mental and physical healthcare workers. For reentering people, the healthcare money should fund healthcare workers embedded in community health centers statewide. Other reentry services should also receive a portion of the money reallocated away from Northern by expanding reentry case management social workers, reentry housing assistance, which would include housing case management, housing search support, temporary rental assistance, and more. Money from Northern should also be reallocated to ensure that no person will enter incarceration just because they are in mental health crisis by funding the state's mobile crisis intervention services to be available around the clock and across the state. Finally, the money from Northern should go directly to the dignity of people who have left incarceration by funding IT supporting automatic record erasure for people who qualify. Reallocating money from the state's sole supermax prison and into remedying harms of the criminal legal system is a more just and moral use of these funds than plugging fiscal holes, as the proposed budget provides. I also want to speak very quickly in support of some specific appropriations within the proposed budget. First, the Office of the Inspector General is fully staffed with 9 positions in the proposed budget. It's critical to fully fund this office so that police are independently investigated and held accountable when they hurt or kill people in Connecticut. Second, the budget funds compliance with prosecutorial transparency requirements. Prosecutors are some of the biggest drivers of mass incarceration, but they're largely insulated from accountability, in part because very little data about their work is publicly available. The funding from this line item reverses that trend, ensuring that the public can monitor the previously hidden work of state's attorneys in their judicial districts. Thank you for considering reallocating the money saved from closing Northern into people's healthcare, reentry, housing, crisis response, and record erasure. We urge this committee to make those reinvestments and to also support the proposed appropriations for the Office of Inspector General and for prosecutorial transparency. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Moore. Are there any questions for Kelly? Seeing none, thank you so much. Have a nice night. Up next is T. Sherelle Banks.
Good evening, Representative Walker, Senator Austin, and members of the Appropriation Committee. My name is T. Sherelle Banks, and I am a member of the Qatar Center for Equity, Health, and Justice. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in front of you for this very important hearing. I'm here to talk about the governor's proposed budget for Judicial and Corrections, House Bill 6439. I want to start by sharing a traditional greeting passed between Maasai warriors, which is, "How are the children?" I start here because Connecticut disproportionately detains Black and brown children at higher rates than their white counterparts. This is also true for the adults they become, and Black and brown adults are incarcerated at rates significantly higher than their white counterparts. According to the Prison Policy Initiative, Black and Latinx people make up 23% of the general population in Connecticut, yet make up 70% of the incarcerated population. When Maasai warriors ask, "How are the children?" the answer to that question is an indicator of how the adult population will thrive. Taking a hard look at Connecticut and its system of incarceration for Black and brown youth, we know that it is an indicator of a system that will continue to criminalize and lock them up as adults. And looking over the proposed budget for the Department of Correction, I can see that there are zero changes in the dollars, despite the fact that there will be facility closures in the coming year. This is alarming to me as a mother and as a community leader. I work with young people and their families who struggle to come up with bond money in case their loved one is incarcerated. I'm friends with people who struggle for basic human rights in halfway houses, many run by the DLC, that cause significant trauma and damage to our communities. I've seen the assembly line that feeds the school to prison pipeline as school resource officers target youth of color in our schools, especially in areas like Hartford, where I am. To allow the DLC to keep their $1 million budget after we have seen the numerous medical malpractice lawsuits over the years, witnessed the brutality of correction officers at Northern and other facilities, and watched as they took away showers for incarcerated people sick with COVID-19 is deplorable. Governor Lamont states that he has commitment to equity. In this proposed budget, there is no commitment to equity. And we cannot allow the DOC to continue to operate with as much funding without accountability. We must interrupt and break down the pathways and forces that continue to push our children and adults into the justice system. Connecticut routinely allows funding to be cut for education, mental health services, housing services, and more, yet corrections remain intact. Numerous studies have shown that rehabilitation begins and ends in the community, and this needs to be kept in mind as we look at this budget for the DOC. At Qatar, we are engaged in a new campaign called Cut, Shut, Invest. The campaign is designed to ensure that Connecticut cut the number of people incarcerated in jails and prisons.
Ms. Banks, just so you know, can you wrap up, please?
Yep. Shut down the prisons and invest in the communities most harmed by systemic racism and mass incarceration, and into housing, healthcare, education, jobs, and more. As we look at this proposed budget, I ask members of the committee to reflect on our campaign's objectives. The Connecticut Department of Correction needs a significant overhaul in its budget and its practices. Without significant changes, our community will only be further harmed by mass incarceration and mass criminalization. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Ms. Banks? Seeing none. Thank you very much for coming tonight. Appreciate it. Have a nice weekend.
Thank you.
Up next is Leighton Johnson. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. Good evening, Senator Austin, Representative Walker, Senator Minor, Representative France, and members of the Appropriations Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. My name is Leighton Johnson, and I'm a resident of New Haven, Connecticut. I'm the Public Education Coordinator for Stop Solitary CT and also a steering committee member. I'm testifying in regards to proposed reallocation of the money saved from the closure of Northern CI corrections. And in the governor's recent 2021 budget address, he stated, "We've learned that quiet isn't always peace, and the norms and notions of what is just isn't always just. He referred to America as the land of steady habits. Well, I believe that CT in general and CTDOC in particular needs to have a steady habit of treating people humanely. The governor's budget should include funds earmarked for programs that help people instead of harming them. I also believe that the fact that the governor chose to only reduce the cost of prison phone calls by 4 cents was a slap in the face and in the pocketbooks and wallets of families of incarcerated. The 13 million or so saved by the closure of Northern should be spent on imparting some savings to families of incarcerated individuals. That burden is heavy on the families and has an adverse effect on the mental health and behavior of individuals who are incarcerated. The governor's budget should also have included a series of cost-saving measures, which include reducing possession of a controlled substance from a felony to a misdemeanor for crime category classifications of 5 or less, eliminating inflationary growth within the agency, and increasing community corrections grants. The goal should be providing opportunities for positive change, and by effectively using the time individuals are in custody, DOC can increase their chances of a successful transition back to the community. That is why the PROTECT Act should be passed. In the PROTECT Act, we have drafted language stating that the ombudsman should be brought back to correction. The creation of the Corrections Ombudsman position will provide a Correction Accountability Commission who will not only select, but also advise the ombudsman. External oversight and accountability will not only help to have an entity that is unbiased in its role and in its duties to give some redress to grievances, but it will also save the state probably hundreds of thousands, if not millions, in lawsuits from individuals who felt that this was the only way they could get some relief for their issues unaddressed. Instead of spending unnecessary money on an inspector general who was not unbiased in most cases when it comes to DOC, the funds can be better allocated here. Further ways to utilize the savings can be community corrections. Community corrections agencies are supposed to provide correctional programs such as alcohol, drug treatment, sex offender treatment, employment, counseling, and referrals, as well as mental health services in order to promote long-term behavior change. Research has demonstrated that treatment combined with supervision has the greatest impact on reducing criminal activity compared to any other criminal justice system sanction. I strongly believe that funds saved should be allocated to diversion programs, coupled with reentry and rehabilitative programs in the community as alternatives to incarceration.
Mr. Johnson, are you almost done?
I'm close to done.
Okay.
I also believe that the money saved should be spent on specialty court grant programs. Specialty courts are effective in handling particular cases of types of cases such as drug cases. Reentry services is supposed to be responsible for carrying out the department's mission to reduce the risk of future criminal conduct. The funds saved should be used to enhance linkages to community-based networks of support. These should include, but not be limited to, inmate and community advocacy, transition programs and release planning, alcohol and drug treatment, parenting, education, apprenticeship, and work vocational skills. Mental health, medical treatment, housing assistance, and reentry services will aid in a successful reentry. The goal of corrections should be to correct, not punish or further harm. The goal of parole and probation should be to ensure that people are able to get the assistance and services that they need.
Mr. Johnson, you have to wrap up now.
I'm almost done. Being in the free world and contributing members of society. Health services, the health division is supposed to maintain a team of professionals. I'm almost done, man.
I know it's a 3-minute time frame, so I'm just letting you know that you've gone beyond that by double now.
Yeah, a lot of people went over, but
and I told them to.
Yeah, from my experience, from the reports from people who are still incarcerated, health services are inadequate, and there's even a lack of certain specialists who can perform procedures and or treatment at a higher quality than the staff they have at hand. Recently, we saw in the news a lawsuit where a lady had her baby in the toilet. There's a profound lack of quality medical care in the DOC, In the past years, there have also been suicides in both the men and women facilities due to lack of adequate medical mental health care. Thank you.
Oh, all right. Thank you very much. Are there any comments or questions for Mr. Johnson? Seeing none, thank you so much. Thank you for coming tonight. Have a nice weekend. Next up is Fernando Munez. Fernando, you're up. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Senator Austin, Representative Walker, Senator Minor, Representative France, and distinguished members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Fernando Muñiz, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Community Solutions Incorporated. We're a nonprofit service provider working with folks involved in the criminal justice, juvenile justice, and child welfare systems. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in House Bill 6439. You have my written testimony, so I will only touch on a couple of parts. First, the state of Connecticut funds essential services in every city and town in Connecticut. These services are purchased through contracts with nonprofit organizations like mine, Community Solutions. I am here, like some of my colleagues earlier, to respectfully request that the legislature appropriate $461 million over 5 years for community nonprofits. As you've heard, over the last decade or more, community nonprofits have lost at least that amount in state funding as it has not kept up with inflation or adequately covered costs and demand for services over the last 13 years. Since the beginning of the pandemic, organizations like mine have incurred significant additional costs for personal protective equipment, cleaning supplies, purchasing equipment to allow for remote work, and hazard pay for staff in our residential programs. At my organization alone, these costs have exceeded $1 million. While foundation grants and a PPP loan allowed us to survive for the last year, unless additional funding is appropriated for nonprofit organizations, we may be forced to close critical services all over the state. Chronic underfunding has been a significant negative impact on nonprofit social service providers. At Community Solutions, that flat funding has meant that our work release residential programs, frontline staff are only paid $13.25 an hour to start. But we are very literally now competing with fast food restaurants and big box employers for talent. These employees provide round-the-clock services and support for people re-entering the community from Connecticut's prisons, and they deserve to be paid a living wage. Finally, the other piece I'd like to touch on is something that some of my colleagues have already testified here, which is that we would respectfully ask that you support the proposed closure of Northern Correctional, and that those dollars that were used to fund that prison be reallocated in a nationally supported justice reinvestment initiative rather than using them to balance the budget. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Munez. Are there any questions for Mr. Munez? Seeing none, thank you so much, and thank you for staying with us all night.
Thank you,
Appreciate it. Up next is Edmund Murphy.
Good evening, Senator Austin and Representative Walker and the other members of the committee. I'm speaking tonight on behalf of the Connecticut Academy of Science and Engineering. It's an organization that's quite different than the organizations we've been hearing from so far this evening that do very important social and legal work for the state. For those of you who aren't familiar with the Academy, it was chartered by Special Act 7653 of the General Assembly. And the Academy supports the state in two major ways, which are related to our charter from the Act 7653. And thus we're requesting funding for fiscal 22 and 23 for two major components of our work. Those components are, first of all, to conduct projects and studies on high interest science and technology topics on behalf of the General Assembly. And secondly, to celebrate science and engineering in the state of Connecticut. Regarding our first major component, since 1976, the Academy has completed over 105 studies and projects for the General Assembly and other state agencies on a variety of issues that address complex technical concepts to be considered in the development and implementation of public policy. In addition to the expertise provided by CASE members for these studies and projects, the Academy's convening authority and our members' network provide access to a wide range of independent expertise from state, national, and international experts. Regarding the second major component of our work, CASE has always focused on the people and the states, on our state's world-class capabilities and our world-class people in science, engineering, and technology. CASE is the only organization in the state that recognizes, celebrates, and connects world-class science and engineering talent. By virtue of the Academy's constantly evolving membership, it remains current and vitally connected to the world's global scientific frontiers that will ultimately create the businesses and industries of the future. So in parallel with this oral testimony, we have submitted written testimony, which specifies our funding request, along with 2 supplemental documents that provide a perspective on CASE's past work. These documents include a list of studies and projects from 2012 to the present, and a report on select recent studies with testimonials and statements on the value of the work provided by CASE. We request this funding to assure that we can continue in our mission. CASE provides advice as requested by and in service to the General Assembly and other state agencies for a fee, and that the income represents our primary source of revenue. With the fiscal crisis, this source of revenue has been significantly impacted. We have been able to support the celebratory aspects of our work by being fiscally conservative, but we can tighten our budget belts no further, and we will find it challenging to continue without some state support. So thank you very much for your time and consideration, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Murphy. Are there any questions for Mr. Murphy? Thank you, and I appreciate the documents. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Up next is Sarah Fox.
She's joining right now, Madam Chair.
I'm sorry, what did you say? Is she on?
She's joining right now.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, perhaps she didn't hear, so if you would please call her again.
Sarah Fox. Are you on? Oh, Sarah Fox. I see you, but you're muted. Sarah Fox. Maybe she can't hear us. I'm going to go to the next person, and if we can figure out what's going on with Sarah, then I'll go back to her. Up next is Rebecca Simonson. Go ahead, Rebecca, you're up.
Okay, great. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Good evening, Senator Austin, Representative Walker, and members of the committee. My name is Rebecca Simonson, and I'm a vice president at 1199 New England, the state's largest healthcare workers union. Our union represents 26,000 healthcare workers across the public and private sectors in Connecticut, including about 7,000 healthcare workers working directly for state agencies across state government. And this includes all 600 or so frontline healthcare workers in the Department of Corrections. Over the last several years, we have come before the Appropriations Committee to urge our legislature to fund inmate healthcare services to address the urgent staffing crisis within DOC Health Services. And for several years, there has been an extreme shortage of the number of healthcare staff, and it has led to really system-wide staffing ratios to fall so low that they are truly unsafe for our members and for inmates alike. And then the pandemic hit, and the crisis really turned into a catastrophe. During the pandemic, there remained 150 healthcare vacancies within the DOC. Still, 1199 members went to work every day to take care of their patients with courage and dedication, risking everything to take care of people who are incarcerated in this state, and in doing so, getting sick by the dozens, and even bringing the virus home to their families. And like we're seeing across our social safety net, the pandemic has really exposed how decades of austerity policies have decimated the services that our members provide and patients rely on, and further exacerbating the extreme inequalities of race and class in Connecticut. And so I have a longer statement that's been submitted, but just a couple quick points for my testimony tonight. So 1199 is here tonight to urge the Appropriations Committee to invest $15 million into inmate medical services to address the growing staffing crisis within the DOC, an additional $15 million. We are also here to echo the call from our brothers and sisters across our movement and call for justice reinvestment. A person leaving prison is 12 times more likely to die in the first 2 weeks of their release than any other person, than a similar person in the general population. We just cannot let that happen in the wealthiest state in the nation. Now is really the time to invest in the 12 to 19 million saved from Northern into critical services for healthcare, mental health care, and reentry services for formerly incarcerated people in our communities. Because in so many ways, people enter prison because they don't have their basic needs met in terms of housing or mental health care or medical care. And then we lock them up, and when we tell them to reintegrate into our communities, but then we don't provide them with the resources to do so. And not only is this an issue of racial justice, but this is a public health issue affecting all of us. The pandemic has made this all the more urgent, as there's a mental health crisis bigger than we've ever seen. Opioid deaths are skyrocketing, and now is the time to expand the social safety net so people don't lose their lives. So if we truly believe in a second chance society.
Rebecca, if you could wrap it up, I'd appreciate it.
Gotcha. If we want to be a force for racial justice, if we believe in giving the formerly incarcerated a second chance, then we really need to be investing in the services that people need to contribute to their communities. And we urge the committee to fund inmate medical services and all the services people need so we can have a budget that reflects the priorities of our state.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. Are there any comments or questions for Rebecca? Seeing none, thank you so much. Appreciate you waiting around for us. I'm going to go back to Sarah Fox now. Sarah, can you hear me?
Yes, hold on a second.
And I can hear you. Go
Yes,
ahead.
Thank you. And I'm going to build off of what Becky just said. So thank you so much for having me here today. Sarah Fox, Director of Policy at the Connecticut Coalition to End Homelessness. And CCH is proud to partner with the ACLU Connecticut, SIU 1199, and Yale Transitions Clinic to fight that any funds from the closure of Northern and other prisons be reinvested into our community. So that is where my testimony will begin tonight. And you can read my remarks in my other remarks on a data match that we conducted with OPM in my testimony. And I am very tired because I have a 1-year-old foster son, so please bear with me. For me, there's been one shining ray of hope this past year. An opportunity arose out of the immediate need to find housing options for those returning to our communities at the start of the pandemic. And CCEH, the Department of Corrections, and OPM quickly raised to form the DOC Reentry Housing and Assistance Program to address the housing needs of those who are end of sentence and without any housing options. We have been working very quickly to get this program off the ground, and we have formed a team of a remarkable team with homeless service providers, reentry providers, DOC discharge planners, and reentry staff. And we're starting to prove that working together through close partnerships, we can show great promise and much improved outcomes for those that are returning home to our communities. So I have a couple examples of individuals who have participated in this program who are doing really well. Nick was incarcerated for 18 months. He came back to Bridgeport. They looked at several studios. He is a member of works with Operation Hope in Fairfield County. He chose a house in Fairfield County, and they set him up with housing. They were able to hook him up with employment. He's now working at a fast food restaurant. He's been working there for several months, and he's doing quite well. So we're seeing that for people returning home who are connected to housing supports, and those that are end of sentence and who before this program would have been out homeless and on the streets, that they're actually able to turn their life around, be self-sufficient, pay for their own rent, and Nick has also been able to buy himself a vehicle. Anthony is another program participant. He was incarcerated for 2 years, and he suffers from several mental health conditions, the most severe being schizophrenia. He's been very paranoid and at one point mentioned that he was very fearful of someone staying in his room with him. But with help of Anthony's probation officer in this cross-system partnership, they were able to connect him with the Recovery Network program and help him stabilize on his medication and provide him with intensive outpatient services. All of this is through this collaboration that is the first to ever happen, where we at CCH are working alongside the criminal justice system to really ensure that people returning home to our communities are getting the housing and the housing supports that they need to reenter. We are asking for a creation of a reentry housing assistance line item within the Department of Correction budget, and that you reallocate no less than $2 million annually to contract with community-based organizations to provide housing-related case management, housing search and navigation, temporary rental assistance, and other basic needs for any inmate assessed as needing reentry housing assistance. This help is critical. It's helping to get people started off on the right foot when they're coming back to the community, and it only makes sense. It's saving dollars and saving lives, and is a really good investment for our state. Thank you for your commitment to ensuring that Connecticut's residents are healthy and stably housed. You are making critical life-saving decisions during this public health crisis, and we appreciate the work that you do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Are there any questions for Sarah? Enjoy that 1-year-old. Have a nice night. Get some rest. Next up is Jamie Laughlin. Sorry if I didn't say your last name right.
Hey,
apologize.
Hello, my name is Jamie Lowfelm. Good evening, Senator Olson, Representative Walker, and members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Jamie Lowfelm. I'm a licensed professional counselor and licensed alcohol and drug counselor at the Connecticut Department of Corrections. I'm currently at Bridgeport Correctional Center. I have been with the agency for the past 13 years. I absolutely love being able to provide mental health and substance abuse treatment to our offender population. I feel very rewarded knowing that I not only provide treatment to our most vulnerable population, but I also am impacting and improving public safety for communities here in Connecticut. I testify today to urge the committee to reject the $1.3 million cut in the budget that the governor has proposed to inmate health services. Instead, the committee should make a real commitment to invest $15 million in DOC health services to expand preventative care for inmates, create a safer environment for staff, and produce healthier communities for us all. The governor's proposed budget cuts negatively impact our patients by delaying the timeliness of care and patients are unable to be seen on a regular basis. Offenders can wait up to a month to be seen by a doctor or a therapist. And in this case, illness becomes so emergent that it's painful and more expensive. We strive to provide a community standard of care within the DOC facilities. People who are incarcerated deserve the same quality of care that they can receive from their community providers, or that we receive from our community providers. By cutting the budget by $1.3 million and not investing in the proper funding to allow us to be fully staffed, we are not able to provide the quality and standard of care that we want to provide to our incarcerated population. Currently, our staffing is already in crisis. We're short-staffed and patients risk not being seen and treated in a timely manner. We want to provide safe and efficient patient care. The longer a patient has to wait, the more acute the illness becomes. We work in dangerous environments with much risk. Being understaffed puts both patients and employees at risk. We also provide treatment to our offender population in an effort to rehabilitate people and release them safely into society. These clients need and deserve a chance, and the public needs and deserves the confidence of safety that is more likely to occur when people are able to get adequate mental health and substance abuse treatment. We need our budget to reflect the staffing levels that we need to produce quality community standard of care in a timely manner. Facilities need licensed mental health clinicians on both first and second shift that meet and are above mandatory minimum staffing levels, and our patients deserve nothing less than quality care. I urge you to disregard the cuts requested by the governor's budget and work with us going forward to help. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jamie.
You're welcome.
Oops, sorry, Jamie. Jamie, I'm sorry. Are there any questions for Jamie? I was talking when I was muted.
Madam Chair, I just have a quick question.
Sure.
Representative Candelaria, go ahead.
Hi.
Thank you, Jamie. Jamie, how many patients do you see in your allocated time? I'm curious to know about that because you talk about the shortage, and I want to make sure that you're spending enough quality time, right, with the patient. So I'm curious to hear a little bit about that, if you don't mind elaborating.
And I'm glad that you asked, because the general public doesn't really know what we do inside the facilities. So I'm currently posted at Bridgeport Correctional Center, which would be equivalent in the community to seeing people on an outpatient basis. So if you went to your therapist once a week for a 45 minutes or an hour session, that's the level of care that's provided at the intake at the jail where I'm posted. If people need a higher level of care, they go somewhere else. But where I we transfer them somewhere else. But where I currently am, it would be considered to like outpatient therapy. So if in the community, I see my therapist an hour a week, that's great. But in the jail, where I have over 65 offenders on my caseload, and there's only 2 of us working on first shift, then it's not possible for me to see 65 people that amount of time. It's just not, it just isn't possible.
Representative Candelaria.
Yeah, thank you for that answer. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any other questions for Jamie? Seeing none. Appreciate you coming in.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Next up is Laurice Brown, who I introduced when I was muted before. So Laurice, you're up now. You're muted, Laurice. Still muted. Still muted. It clicked off and then clicked back off. Try again. It's keeping the clip. You're still muted. You're still muted.
You gotta press hard.
Press hard. You're still muted, Larice.
Can you hear me?
Now we can hear you, yes.
All right, sorry for that.
That's all right.
Good evening, Senator Osteen, Representative Walker, and members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Larice Brown, and I'm an LPN at Manson Youth Institution in Cheshire. I've worked for Manson Youth for 5 years and DOC for 15 years. Even though it can be stressful, I honestly enjoy my job and caring for my patients. I'm testifying today to urge the committee to reject the $1.3 million in cuts that the governor has proposed to inmate medical services in the DOC budget, and to instead increase funding and invest $15 million in workers like myself. My coworkers and I have worked hard to keep our patients healthy and alive during this pandemic. Before the pandemic, we were already working short-staffed. We came before this committee in 2019 to ask for increased funding for inmate medical services. Here we are again in 2021, still asking for the same thing. If you add in the pandemic and the governor's proposed $1.3 million in cuts to inmate medical services, you put our patients at increased risk for medical errors due to overworked staff being tired from constant mandated overtime, and you continue to have a lack of adequate preventive and rehabilitative care that can reduce recidivism. I myself was mandated every day that I reported to work the entire month of December 2020 and the beginning of January of this year. I was not alone. If you do not prevent these cuts, matters are only going to get worse for me and my coworkers and the patients that we work so hard for. For example, at times, it's hard to get the needed supplies to care for them. With the proposed budget cuts, it's only going to get more difficult. At Manson Youth, where I work, there have been times that I have worked alone due to staff shortage. Other times, Manson's Health Services Unit has had to be shut down overnight because we just didn't have the needed staffing. Each time that our Health Services Unit has had to be shut down, this put our patients in danger. I know that my coworkers and I do not want to continue seeing our patients at risk. Hiring more staff by investing $15 million in inmate medical services would help to expand preventive care for inmates, create a safer environment for staff, and produce healthier communities for all of us. In addition, the state would save money because a new hire's pay rate would be a lot less than paying the constant mandated overtime that is currently being paid. I urge you to disregard the cuts requested in the governor's budget and work with us going forward to find a way to help us provide the best care for our patients. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Larice. Representative Walker.
Thank you, Larice. Can you tell me how many times have you been forced to work overtime in Manson Youth?
Constantly, actually. The entire month of December, each day that I reported to work, I did a double shift. And the beginning of December, approximately the first 3 weeks that I went to work, I did a double shift every day. It's only recently that I haven't been mandated every day. And that's because I'm normally a second shift worker, but I went on to third shift because I was mandated to third shift each day. But now I'm temporarily working third shift to help because first shift has a few more staff, so I'm not being mandated into first shift. So I'm doing third shift temporarily.
How long have you, can I ask, how long have you been working for DOC and at
DOC about 15 years. I've been working for the state 27 years, but I've been working for DOC 15 years.
So you worked there when UConn Medical was in charge?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your testimony.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions? Seeing none. Thank you very much, Larice. Be safe.
Thank you.
Next up is Jacob DeGennaro.
Good evening, Senator Austin, Representative Walker, and the members of the Appropriation Committee. My name is Jacob DeGennaro, and I'm a nurse at Cheshire Correctional Institute. I came over from Hartford Hospital, and I'm proud to have worked for the Department of Corrections and Yukon Health previously. Since 2017, we're on a daily basis. We strive to provide multidimensional, high-quality healthcare to one of our most at-risk populations. I am testifying today to urge the committee to reject the $1.3 million in cuts that the governor has proposed to healthcare services at DOC, and instead put a significant investment into staffing and funding within the department. For the last year, coworkers and I have decided the well-being of ourselves and our loved ones in order to provide the care needed by our patients to remain healthy and alive. We have braved this ever-changing, relentless threat with our heads held high and our hearts on our sleeve. Unfortunately, no matter how many long, hard hours we put in, without the proper resources, which include appropriate equipment and proper training, our effectiveness and efficiency is significantly limited. If our budget is there, our ability to deliver quality care based on community standards and practice is a near task. Instead of cutting staffing and depriving nurse mental health staff that at a critical need will likely push health services unit over the edge. Speaking more personal level, as a registered nurse, my duties extend far beyond just patient care aspect of our job. The medical and mental health staff do more than just deliver health or mental health care. The transition from incarceration back to the world is one of the most difficult times the population will ever face in their lives. We need more resources to give us the ability to provide the education, resources, and support that they need to succeed when they leave. We need to be put in a position to work cohesively with the direction our criminal justice system is going, not be a hindrance. After all that we've been through over the past year, showing us just how uncertain the world is, the one constant that continues to persevere has been people. There is no better time now than to make investment in people. With all of the progression being made within our criminal justice system, now is the time to establish ourselves as true leaders within our country and within our communities. Now is the time that our actions can show that we are leaders. Progress does not come from following the established status quo. Progress comes from leading towards a new path. Cutting the budget is not a solution. It is simply a deferment. We are asking that you disregard the governor's proposal and work with us to find a true solution. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much, Jacob. Are there any questions for Jacob? Seeing none, thank you so much. Next up is Indira Middo. You're up.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, setting yourself. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Good evening, Senator Olson, Representative Walker, and members of the committee. My name is Andrea Meadow, and I'm a discharge planner at Osborne Corrections. I've worked for DOC for 13 years. My job as a discharge planner is help prepare inmates for their release from prison, help them to acquire skills and programs so that they can achieve a successful transition back into our community. My coworkers and I are very disappointed in the governor's budget because of the lack of access to reentry services the governor has proposed. Because of this, District 1199 has joined the Justice Reinvestment Coalition to demand that we fight for equity for justice impacting people of Connecticut. We demand investment of current and future DOC dollars into resources such as assistance, finding, retaining, housing, expanding medical and behavioral health services in the community, funding criminal record deletions, and creating a 24-hour mobile crisis unit to respond to people with mental health crises. This will help avoid criminalization and incarceration. We must also fund, support, and staff inmate medical services within the DOC to amend systemic staffing crisis in prison health care. Our demand to expand reentry service is a demand for racial justice. Statistics have shown that state disproportionately incarcerates people of color. The population we serve are of every color, but Black and Brown often have very acute medical and mental health needs. On a daily basis, I am constantly making sure inmates being released have active orders for medication, appointments, insurance, etc. Over the last several years, we have been cut to the bone, along with other critical medical and mental health services for inmates. We can't simply restore these services. We must expand the reentry services, especially now that individuals are getting released due to pandemics and moving toward the idea to treat versus incarceration. We need more support for people when they leave prison. Housing, employment, transportation, mental health, and medical care. Only with these community supports will individuals have a chance to succeed. I see firsthand how the absence of robust reentry services for the formerly incarcerated reinforces structural racism because of the huge barriers in communities of colors, that communities of colors face in terms of employment, housing, healthcare, and education. People of color who are leaving prison and trying to re-enter their communities lack the support system necessary to do so. Making the situation even worse, these people have to struggle with nonviolent charges like smoking marijuana. The system in our society have failed people, especially people of color. The reward for this is send them to prison. Prison is what happens when people don't have their basic needs met. And it's also what sends people back to prison. We need the programs, the people to follow them, the people to encourage them and assist them so that they can be successful. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Are there any comments or questions? Representative Porter.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for your testimony, Andrea. Could you tell me how effectively you are currently able to perform your job responsibilities?
Well, with the pandemic and as some of the others have said previously, we don't have enough programs. And with them moving towards treatment, they do have a lot of things that we're trying to do, but we can't do them because our hands are tied. We don't have the money. We don't have the people to support the ideas. Every time a person comes into my office, I have a conversation with them. And I tell them, I said, is this the life you want to live or do you want to change? A lot of the guys that I've spoken to, they said they want to change. So I will try to direct them in the right direction with like places like Amazon, a lot of warehouse jobs and stuff that they will hire a felon. But sometimes we don't have that option because they don't have housing. They don't have a driver's license. They can't even get a driver's license. They don't have the resources to get the things that they have. So yes, my hands are tied. And then the ones that are medically compromised, we don't have nursing homes that are willing to accept them. Why? Because guess what the first question is? What are they? What are they in there for? And those things are what are tying our hands to, be able to effectively move them forward so that they can be successful.
Well, thank you for that response. And I do appreciate your testimony today and providing us with great transparency. So thank you. And thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Have a nice night.
You too. Thank you.
Next up is Ashley Roy.
Not present, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Next up is Derica Reed.
Also not present.
Thank you. Next up is Colleen Hurlbert.
Also not present.
Next up is James Murray.
And he is not present as well.
All righty. Next up is Rob Cheatham. Is Rob Cheatham? Rob, you're up.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, or good evening, actually. Good evening, Chairwoman Walker, Chairwoman Osteen, and members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Robert Cheatham, and I'm a member of AFS-CME Council 4, Local 478, which represents employees in the Department of Motor Vehicles. The members of Local 478 have been showing up and continuing to provide service throughout COVID-19, despite the tremendous risks to them and their families. I want to take the opportunity tonight to speak about the Department of Motor Vehicles budget. In recent years, we have seen increasing privatization of the Department of Motor Vehicles and a continued lack of staff at the remaining locations. The employees at the Department of Motor Vehicles deserve to have adequate funding that will allow us to provide the quality of service the people of Connecticut deserve. Adequate funding could provide more staff and help continue to keep officers staffed as we approach a possible retirement cliff. The increased privatization of DMV services has been troubling for many of us that work in the agency. We often hear legislators praise AAA for their speed and wait times as opposed to DMV. However, AAA operated under the old computer system that the DMV used instead of the privatized 3M disaster the same employees are using. If the DMV had avoided privatization, it could have avoided a problem and maintained a system that was operated by the state employees and state employee techs. Privatization allows for the public sensitive information to be handled by employees that aren't accountable to the people of the state. Additionally, DMV is a significant revenue driver to the state of Connecticut, and further privatization would reduce a vital income stream. DMV brings in hundreds of millions of dollars to the state while costing a fraction of that to operate. Privatizing this revenue stream would continue austerity budget practices when we need to be investing in our state agencies and public employees. I want to urge the committee to improve funding to the Department of Motor Vehicles and to reject any efforts to privatize our jobs and the work that we do. I thank you for your time. Have a good night.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cheatham. Are there any questions? Seeing none. Thank you very much for coming tonight. I appreciate you waiting all night to speak in front of us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next up, anytime. Next up is Jean-Claude Ambrose.
Yes, hello. Good evening, esteemed senators and representatives of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Jean-Claude Ambrose, speaking to you from the submarine capital of the world, Groton, Connecticut. I worked for the Connecticut Department of Correction as a vocational instructor for 16 years for Unified School District Number 1 at York Correctional Institution, the only female state facility. I currently serve as a P3B union steward since 2017. My testimony this evening is to respectfully request dedicating independent educational funding for Unified School District Number 1. This funding will provide fair and equitable treatment to all students who have a right to better themselves for the future. In the past decade, money for state correctional education has decreased significantly. In order to give our returning citizens an increased chance of success upon reentry, it is all of our professional, ethical, and moral obligations to improve our approach and support a population who desperately needs it. Working with women at York CI gives me background knowledge on educational inequities between male and female incarcerated individuals. Here is one glaring example I would like to share. A carpentry vocational program was added to the female facility in 2017-18 to an exciting prison population. However, in over 2 years, DOC and USD1 were unable to secure funding to invest in needed modifications for the new carpentry vocational program, a trade which is identified as a non-traditional job for women. Now the class has been scuttled from York CI and relocated to another male facility where a carpentry program already exists. We can all agree there is no educational gender equity or fairness in that. If there was a dedicated budget line item for school equipment and materials, which all other state schools receive, this disenfranchisement of the female population would not be currently occurring. Investment in education technology is desperately needed for the school district to better replicate systems used in current workforce. Most computers used in correctional classrooms are 2 operating systems behind the ones used by you and I this evening. Also, our need for internet access and network integration is critical for educators to effectively incorporate modernized teaching tools and strategies to increase positive student learning outcomes. These are basic requirements necessary in all 21st century classrooms. The state of Connecticut's own research supports the investment in correctional education, citing every dollar invested in prison education saves state taxpayers $5 in future incarceration costs. Additionally, returning citizens leaving prison achieving a state high school diploma or vocational certificate increases likelihood for finding employment, as well as reducing the recidivism rate significantly. A few years ago, I had the privilege to meet with Representative Walker to discuss these very issues. It was a productive meeting resulting in amending legislation to fund the school district independently. The certified teaching staff were appreciative of the legislature's support. Unfortunately, the budget item for correctional education investment was lined out at the governor's desk. I come before you once again asking for your support for correctional education and our professional teaching staff. Please consider adding independent funding for Unified School District Number 1 as an annual budget line item in Bill 6439. It is the technology investment in classroom support needed for our diverse population to get the second chance they truly deserve. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Representative Walker.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you for
My pleasure.
How much did we put in for your facility?
To my knowledge, I believe it was $250,000, and it was that's what was discussed.
Okay. Just want to know. Thank you, and I'm glad that you are fighting for women to be trained in these.
It's my pleasure. It's my passion and my joy. I've been there my whole career, and again, with the female population, they have everything to gain by being successful and everything to lose if they're not. So we got to give them their support.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you,
very
Representative Walker. And thank you, committee.
Are there any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Have a nice night and have a nice weekend.
You as well.
De-
Thank you.
You as well. Marlene DeBellis.
Good evening. My name is Marlene DeBellis Brandon, and I thank you for this opportunity to testify. I volunteer as the current board chair of Connecticut Renaissance, and I am a licensed clinical social worker. I believe it is crucial to provide funding and investment in programs such as Connecticut Renaissance that serve persons with significant legal histories in order to effectively give them the tools and hope they need to rebuild their lives. The school to prison pipeline and the high rate of recidivism among convicted and incarcerated persons is a tragic pattern that impacts the entire community. In order to change this formidable pattern, treatment and services need to offer highly skilled clinicians, adequate environmental conditions for both workers and clients, and community services with employment opportunities that would hold a high level of morale and set up the client for success. When persons with offender histories are able to turn their lives around, the entire community benefits and becomes safer. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Marlene. Are there any questions? Thank you very much for being with us so late and for making it through our long hearing tonight. Appreciate it. Next up is Beth Hamilton.
She is not present, Madam Chair.
Roland Bishop. Roland? I thought I saw you. Roland Bishop?
I'm sorry, I had to unmute. Can you
Okay,
hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Thank you, Senator Austin and Representative Walker and the Appropriations Committee. Thank you for hanging in there to this time. My name is Roland Bishop. I'm a state school teacher in Willard Cybalski Correctional Institution. That's my job, and that's also my passion. I'm also the Secretary Treasurer of CSEA, and I'm the elected president of the P3B professional union that covers the teachers, vocational instructors, principals, department heads, school psychologists, and USD1. I come here today to discuss the budget, and a colleague of mine, J.C. Amboise, he referenced Bill 6439. I know I was here a couple of years ago, and we talked about funding the legal school district and corrections. And I just wanted to give you some quick data. Currently, there's 9,100 incarcerated population. There's about 1,200 unduplicated enrollment in the school system. Currently, we are funded through Title I funding, grants, and as another expense in the Department of Corrections budget. So our funding is uneven. And what we're looking for is some seed money to upgrade our technology platforms. As was mentioned, we have CAD, commercial cleaning, machine tool, and as carpentry was mentioned. So the school district put some other data on it, and I'm sure most of you know this, is the entity that produces the largest number of GEDs in Connecticut. And the vocational programs, if they're brought up to current standards, I understand we're looking for reentry, but we can significantly increase the pool of candidates for reentry programs by putting skills behind them and also their academic credentials, especially with colleges looking for the students transitioning out of the facility. So this is important. Reentry is important, but pre-release education married with responsible reentry is truly reform. And the last point I want to make, the carpentry program at York was brought up. And if we can have seed money in order to be entrepreneurial and work within the department, I'll give you an example. We work with the local trade unions here in Hartford, and we're able to secure interviews for paid apprenticeships for union books with the laborers union from 2 women that graduated that carpentry program. Now, that's just being entrepreneurial. If we can really work in a standardized system that's funded, we can really ramp those things up, including other programs. And I remember Mr. Johnson, he was on at about 8:30. That's what he was talking about, was apprenticeships. So we have to take that next step in the school district to match up with reentry. It can't be reentry standalone and pre-release education standalone. So that was the point I wanted to drive home tonight. And I really appreciate everybody listening to it, because there's true reform here right in front of us. And I'd like to, as they say, the chips are in the middle of the table. Let's pick them up. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Bishop. Are there any questions? Representative Walker?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Bishop, you said that you have Title I students in your program?
Not in my program currently. I've had them. I work in the reentry facility, so they'll come through as they go down a level, come through my facility. Like maybe they'll come out of MYI, come to my facility. They'll be in my classroom or my program until they transition out. So we have to we have to really manage the data as students move from level to level and from facility to facility, and keep them within education, and then match that education up with reentry programs that are going to take place when they do leave the facility.
No,
I'm sorry.
I hear you on that, but I'm looking for something, and I just looked in the ESSER funds, the federal funds that came down with COVID. That came during. It's been late, so
that's fine.
But
not a problem.
We had ESSER funds, which were elementary, secondary, federal dollars that came to Connecticut for towns and districts. And I do not see you listed under the Unified District 1. And it's supposed to be funded through those people that have Title I students. So we need to, I'm saying this so that my colleagues hear me. So we need to follow up with that issue, because you theoretically should be getting Title I dollars under Unified District 1, and you don't. And we need to fix that. So I guess I use you a little bit just so that I can communicate to my colleagues, because I can't call anybody tonight. It's too late. But I want them to hear that so that we can address this on Monday. Thank you, sir.
Well, just one thing. We do get Title I funding, but you're referring to the COVID.
Right.
Okay.
And you were not listed in there, but you should be, because according to the federal guidelines, it is to fund programming for Title I students. They do not say Title I students that are incarcerated. It says Title I students in Connecticut. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Roland. Roland, I just have one question. Are both sides open, Willard and Cybulski? I thought one of them had closed.
Both sides are open.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too. Have a nice one. Next up is Mr. Clark, Andrew Clark. Andrew, I'm just letting you know, I apologize. I didn't have you on my calendar. I don't know what happened, and I apologize for not being there the other day. Just thought I'd tell you that.
Oh, it's okay. We missed your voice, but we know it's strong and out there. And I was looking to follow up with you anyway on it. So
okay.
We know
Go ahead. And how did you get next to last? I don't understand that, Andrew.
Well, this is actually pretty early for appropriations budget hearing, right? I mean,
it is actually.
And, as a former clerk, I always loved hearing it. So it's actually a pleasure, and I'm humbled to go last, because a lot of what I heard, I'd love to reflect on, including Roland, the teacher that just went up, Mr. Bishop. He talked, the chips are on the table, right? We're in a moment right now, and that's what I'm here to talk about. I'm Andrew Clark. I direct the Institute for Municipal and Regional Policy at Central Connecticut State University. And I'm really here to testify on a white paper. It's part of my testimony. It's called Connecticut at the Crossroads, COVID-19, the State Budget Crisis, and the Path Towards Decarceration, Public Safety, and Community Investment. And I'm here to try to convince you that Connecticut's at a watershed moment right now. Essentially, this paper was worked on over the past few months. I want to recognize my colleagues at the Human Rights Network for Human Rights at Wesleyan. There were some students from Brown, University of Connecticut, University of Pennsylvania, Stanford, Wesleyan. They all helped to create this 105-page document. Over 300 people have signed on to this document, including professors from Yale, University of Connecticut, Wesleyan, UHA, Western Connecticut, Central Connecticut, as well as community providers and directly impacted people. Why is a white paper important? Why is research important? Senator Austin, you mentioned Representative Malone. Representative Malone used to chair the Legislative Program Review and Investigations Committee, which, as you know, doesn't exist anymore, but it was one of the few entities that the legislature had to really look into how your policies were being implemented. Well, he commissioned in 2001 a report on recidivism. It was the first time our state looked at recidivism in the state. And it was subsequent to that Representative Walker, your former colleague, Representative Dyson, the former chair, looked at the issue on whole in 2003, and with the Council of State Governments, who submitted a white paper called Justice Reinvestment, which has been mentioned a lot today, hosted a conference called Building Bridges. And I know Representative Candelaria was on the House floor in 2004 after that conference when that legislation, that watershed moment, that legislation passed. It was 04234. It was an act concerning prison overcrowding. At that time, we were on a road towards hyper-incarceration. And I want people to recognize that we could easily be more in the hole today had that not happened. We are now the first state in the nation to cut 50. That means we are half of the population we were at the height of our prison population in 2008. And we have an opportunity to lead the nation again, but it's not going to be from nibbling around the edges. And what this paper talks about is what is what a lot of folks have been referencing tonight, from Barbara Fair to Mike Askew, to Bob Gillis, to the 1199 workers and the folks that are teaching vocational ed and otherwise. You need to change the system. The system needs to change, and that has to be reflected in the ultimate policy document, and that's the budget. And so what we do, and we're happy to assist with this. There's a lot of people that want to be at the table with you, helping to craft this. But essentially what it does is it uses international rights standards and models that work and says, how can we do it differently? We've done a lot differently here, but it's now really a chance to turn the corner. And by doing that, what you do is you take a look at Norway, where they say the punishment is the taking away of freedom, and everything else that is done after that is about making someone whole. It's about creating good neighbors, and we still aren't doing that. And the way that we can do that is in things like with education. You take the education system outside of the Department of Correction. It's completely independent of that. The healthcare system outside of that. In places like Norway, it's your family doctor that comes to you in the prison. It's not a prison employee that does that. And you have a justice reinvestment system that ensures there's reinvestment. And only in doing so will we cut that recidivism rate that Jack Malone and the Prison Overcrowding, the Legislative Program and Review Investigations Committee identified at 70%. 70% of the people being rearrested within a year, 50% coming back to prison. We are still at those rates. We haven't changed that dynamic, and we're not going to be able to unless we fully shift the system. And that can be done by going outside in, by having the people most impacted at the table, setting the standards for care. And I'd be happy to talk more about that. I know it's the end of the night, but there's a path forward. Connecticut can really show the nation how to change and continue to lead. And I know all of you are committed towards that, and there's a way forward that we can do that.
So thank you very much, Andrew. I am convinced that we don't handle the inmate population numbers where they are today without dealing with the mental health component of it. And I don't think that we will make significant decreases in the inmate population unless we deal with that one specific component, because I firmly believe that we moved from our state hospital institutions and moved that population directly into the prison system. And I think the numbers bear that out.
And I know the Sentencing Commission and Alex Sarkov are committed to working with you on following up on that. And, you know, what I'd say about that too is it's been referenced over the course of the testimony tonight. This idea of transparency, the nurse who talked about people don't know what happens inside. That's the problem. There's not enough transparency, and it's not a reflection of the department. It's just the system. We have not created the transparency to allow for that oversight to make sure that those needs are being met. We created the system at a time, and it's really appropriate that Northern is closing, because that's the epitome of what we were doing. Lock them up, throw away the key, don't pretend that they don't exist. Well, we have to fully shift that. And in doing so, we'll get at those issues that you want to address. And I know a lot of people want to address.
Are there any other questions for Andrew?
And I want to mention Representative Nolan was at the conference too, and we loved his participation.
He's great. He's all duded up tonight, though. I don't understand it. I texted him earlier. I said, what, you got dressed up for the second half of the meeting? Because we were on meetings all day. He wasn't dressed up then. All dressed up now.
Rep Tursek, you got a base back there, huh? Nice.
Are there any other questions for Andrew?
So good to see everyone.
Nice to see you
Ms.
too.
Gillette, we were working side by side, and Sue Keen, my mentor.
Oh, Andrew, it's so good to see you.
See, everybody loves you, Andrew. So thank you very much for coming tonight, Andrew.
Thank you.
I'll read the white paper.
Chair?
I have Ed Valente.
I don't think we have Ed, but we do have someone who came in under a phone number. So we're going to allow that person to speak, and we'll find out who they are.
Okay, Ed Valente in, Eddie?
But not by name, no, he is not here.
Okay,
So we'll see. This could be it.
okay.
Okay.
Hi, this is Marlene, and I already testified, but I called back on this number because I wanted to hear the rest of the meeting. I hope that was okay.
That's fine. So you don't need to speak
Thank-
then? Thank you,
No, because I
Marlene.
already did. Thank
All
you very
right.
much.
Very good.
Well, then, Madam Chair, we are done.
Okay, Madam Administrator, what do we have going on next week?
Next week, please.
Oh my goodness, we have all sorts of great things happening next week. So next Tuesday, beginning at 10 a.m., we are holding the public hearing on the Health Subcommittee Agency. On Wednesday, starting at 10 a.m., we are holding the public hearing on the Human Services Agencies. On Thursday, we have a very full day. We have the agency presentations for the higher education agencies. We begin the evening portion at 4 o'clock with student panels from the constituent units, followed by a public hearing at 6:30. And then Friday, we have the state agency presentations for the Human Services Subcommittee.
But no Friday public hearing?
But no Friday public hearing.
Woohoo! Woohoo! Very good. We're all happy about that.
Oh, I like it when I make you happy.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to know that both public health and judicial are still in their public hearing. If you feel like getting some more listening in, you can join them if you so choose. If not, Madam Administrator, thank you for everything, and all your staff for keeping everything moving smoothly along, and good night, everybody.
Good night. Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night, all.
Good night, everyone.
Night.
Thank you, my peeps. And oh,
Good night.
Anthony, woo!
I was having tea with the nephews.